Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 79 of Podcast vs. Enemies, a Destiny Massive Breakdown show. After almost a month apart, the whole PvE squad is finally back together. Court, Impetus, it's great to be back this week. How have you guys been? What have you been up to?
You want me to go first? I guess I'll go first because I was out the last one.
To be honest, I don't think we've been doing a lot of much in Destiny.
No, yeah. The silence was intentional. There's been some server outages going on this past week. If you're listening to this in the future and don't remember or weren't playing by this point, but yeah, it's been a little rough, but we're trying to make do. I'm gonna see if I can get a master challenge done on Crota's end later today with Court. I think I did one GM also with Court and one of our patrons, Cody, earlier in the week. What else have I done? I logged in to look at Eververse. Just the basics, really. Not a whole lot beyond that. Court, did you do anything?
Well, I said this before to some of the patrons when we were in a voice chat, just kind of casually talking while we were trying to log into the game. But this time last season, I think we're all kind of fatigued anyway. People were playing other games. I know, Saint and I were playing some DMZ. But this time, with this season, I actually do want to play more Destiny. I just can't. As Impetus said there, we're going to be trying to do a master challenge run after the podcast. And outside of Destiny, seeing as I've got plenty of time to do stuff, I've just been working on my next infographic. That's the damage stacking. So hopefully, fingers crossed, have that out for at least before the next episode. So episode 80 before that. Saint, what have you been up to?
I've been quite sick this week, honestly, pretty much since Monday night. You can probably hear it in my voice a little bit, but luckily I'm over that for the most part. No more fever or anything like that. I think it was just some kind of cold or flu or something like that. No COVID, no strep, all that stuff. I managed to get, just swabbed and jabbed as many times as I could. But I'm thankful to have a good primary care doctor and to be getting over that. I, too, kind of struggled to play Destiny. It was really a bummer to try to sign on for raid night and to just get a bunch of error codes and stuff like that. But hey, DMZ's over there, Starfield's over here. It's fine. We got games to play. I did still manage to get a couple of GM clears. Did a normal Crota run, and I got 3 Oversoul Essence to drop, which is nice. Really enjoy seeing those changes in effect, even if that took a couple extra days. Those are really solid changes. That puts me up to around 15, so I may be able to finish that out this week if I'm able to get that master challenge done over the next couple of nights and hopefully get that necrochasm finally pretty soon. All right, I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's been a pretty light week, Destiny-wise, but we're all back together, so I think you guys know what time it is. Before we get into that, let's give a shout out to some people that support the show.
Yeah, we don't have any reviews this week or new patrons, but of course we will be shouting out our usual sponsors that are A Modern Viking, Asking Monk, Bryce Aroni, Deacon, I Am K Rose, Moonlight, and This Moment. You can send us all kinds of feedback directly to any of our socials or via the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server. Positive, critical, and constructive feedback helps with the trajectory of the podcast and how we present and break down builds, activities, and much more in the PvE sandbox for all kinds of Destiny players. We also want to extend a special thanks and appreciation to everyone that does support PvE, whether that is downloading and listening to our show, discussing it on social media and our Discord server, or supporting us via Patreon. Speaking of Patreon, if you'd like to support the show, please visit DestinyMassiveBreakdowns.com and click on the link to Patreon. You'll get access to members-only channels in Discord, behind-the-scenes previews like episodes, kind of upcoming stuff, input on the future of the show, plus access to our legendary annual merch drop. Impetus, what are we discussing this week?
Well, it is the highlight of the season as we plan, of course. There's still a lot of weeks left, but we are finally tackling the reprised Crota's End raid. Everything you need to know, it's going to be in this episode. We've got encounter pain points, we've got some tips, we've got some builds. We're going to be covering the weapons that drop from Crota's End, doing breakdowns of those. It's all in this episode, so stay tuned. Before we get into that, real quick, a little housekeeping, podcast updates, and then we also want to talk about some TWID / Bungie responses, some fun things there. We have a correction to kinetic trimmers and how it functions on SMGs per the last episode. Kinetic trimmers fires on 14 bullets from SMGs was changed in Season 22 from 12. Bungie did also say in the patch notes that they plan to further tweak the archetype / weapon types for kinetic trimmers in the future. So even this new number may not even be the permanent number itself, but that is what it is at this point in time. We've also got a bit of an update to the science that we do here in DMB, all the different folks that contribute to Destiny science, and more specifically Destiny spreadsheets and where to find those. Now that is changing a little bit, so we want to give a special thank you to Bean Lab, who has passed on the Destiny spreadsheets handle, and that is now being incorporated into the Destiny Massive Breakdown brand. So if you've ever heard about some of the science that we kind of throw out throughout the various episodes, any other pieces of data, values, stuff like that, you might be thinking, where does this all come from? We do have a place where this all does come from, because it does come from one place now, and we are trying to make that a little bit easier for you folks to find so that you can kind of follow along with us, look stuff up after you listen to the episode so you know where we're getting our information from. So if you are keen to research that, this link tree will be your go-to. We'll keep it updated for each season, and we'll be referring to the link tree for future episodes. And that is, Court, where specifically is it? Because I know that you made the big announcement in our Discord for folks. Where can they find that right now?
Yeah, so if you're not in the Discord, I'll probably either get the Massive Breakdowns Twitter to tweet out something, or use the Destiny spreadsheets handle as well. But yeah, you can just search for Linktree and then Destiny spreadsheets, just those two words. The actual URL is linktr.ee/Destiny spreadsheets.
Perfect. And if you do have any suggestions, please reach out to any of us, also specifically to Court if you want. We are always trying to make this more accessible, and we're hoping that this change does accomplish that goal. All right, we're just going to cover the TWID here real quick. Not a whole lot of serious stuff, but very, very fun stuff, and a little heads up, a little surprise. So, of course, we are what's the word I want to use? We're recovering from the crafting and all the shenanigans that have been occurring here with crafting system kind of on crack, really, is probably the simplest way to describe it. So we're still working through, or I should say Bungie's still working through the kinks on those. We're slowly coming out of that now. There's still some additional issues that are ongoing. One of the heads up, or actually we were given several heads up. One of those is coming in Season 23, and that is a catalyst for an exotic weapon, a long-awaited, long-requested one. Thorn is finally getting a catalyst in Season 23. We were given just an image of this, and that image did show an intrinsic plus 20 range and a plus 10 stability stat bumps there. And then the actual description for the Thorn catalyst reads, dealing a final blow or absorbing a remnant grants additional range as well as increased mobility and handling for a short time. Again, we'll have the details next season when we get our hands on the catalyst, but it's finally coming. Yeah, kind of excited for that. I still think mostly of Thorn as a PvP weapon. I don't know, do you guys use Thorn in PvE? I know as the Warlock representative, it's probably surprising considering I do have access to necrotic grips and the synergies that are there with Thorn. But what do you guys feel about this? Is this something that you're looking forward to using in PvP? Do you want to try it in PvE, see how that works?
Think that, yeah, the necrotic grips is fun, especially with the hand cannon buffs. It's like pretty viable these days. But that's pretty much it. And PvP, I think this is just like really I don't want to say forcing a meta. It's just strongly encouraging a meta, which is already like hand cannons are already pretty decently popular in the meta, and they kind of stay there. And now we are just working on the weaknesses of Thorn, which is essentially its range, and just pumping up all of its other stats at the same time. Because, like, hey, why not? People wanted a Thorn Catalyst. We're just going to give you an absolutely juiced Thorn Catalyst. And I definitely anticipate this thing being at pretty much pinnacle of the PvP meta after this comes out, and at least viable with Necrotic Grips in PvE.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is pretty much a PvP weapon, and that's okay. We've discussed this in previous episodes where, Thorn in Destiny 1 was purely PvP. I didn't see anyone use Thorn elsewhere. I'm sure people would have, but in Destiny 2, it got that whole kind of absorbing your remnant. It gets kind of poison damage, and you can do increased damage through that. And it's fine in PvE, but again, this is a PvP change, and that's fine. I probably wouldn't be using this in PvE anyway. When you've got things like Hawkmoon, you've got Crimson, you've got Ace of Spades. There's a very crowded Malfeasance there as well. There's a very crowded market in the kinetic slot, but very interesting in PvP. That's going to be a very juiced weapon if you get that final blow or just absorbing a remnant. I'm getting Destiny 1 vibes just looking at how, because Thorn was a stat monster back then, on top of it being that poison damage was it sure was toxic.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty fun heads up. We've got another heads up here in the form of some videos that were uploaded to the Destiny YouTube channel talking about the supers and aspects coming to the final shape. The new ones, that is. So new super and aspect for Arc Hunter, the super being named to Storm's Edge, new super coming to Void Titan, Twilight Arsenal, and the new super coming to Solar Warlock, Song of Flame. This is mostly just gameplay footage with a little bit of commentary over the top there, so if you missed out on the initial introduction of those and you want to get a little bit more in-depth look, go for it. Very cool footage. Again, I think we're probably going to save some thoughts and feelings once we get our hands on these actual supers and aspects, but that is our other heads up here. And then the last thing in the TWID was just heads up that the master version of Crota's End is now live. That's kind of one of the reasons why we ended up waiting to even do this episode, just so we could get a sense of how this raid plays out on the additional difficulty, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Last thing here that's not official, but also kind of official. Bungie hopped onto Reddit to tease a little bit for a Reddit post talking. It was a post requesting that Breakneck, the Gambit auto rifle, be returned, and we got the eyes emoji from the official D2 team account there. So possibly might be seeing Breakneck with random rolls appearing as the new Gambit weapon next season. That was an original quest item from Gambit. It's an auto rifle. If you've never played with Breakneck before, kinetic precision frame to be specific, firing at 450 RPM. It did have a unique perk on it called Onslaught that has gone through a lot of changes. There's not a whole lot, not much of a point of it explaining what Onslaught does, because it will probably be tweaked when it does come back, if it should come back. But it was a trait that increases the RPM for every stack of Rampage you have active. It did get tuned pretty heavily to the point where it really wasn't viable, and that took a lot of people off, because Breakneck itself was a very popular weapon, really nice looking weapon, great to fire, great to aim down sights. So again, if Breakneck does come back, we may say Onslaught, we may not say Onslaught, but yeah, kinetic precision frame auto rifle. I can't even think off the top of my head the last time I used one. I'm sure I have one in my vault, but I probably haven't used it seriously in a long time. But yeah, that would be exciting. I think I got Breakneck from the exotic kiosk. Actually, it wasn't one of the quests that I could complete prior to sunsetting. So that'll be fun to probably play with and get an earn with new perks and origin traits and all that fun stuff. Should it return? You guys play with Breakneck a lot?
Back in those days, yes, I used it a lot. It was my go-to auto rifle, and I feel like precisions back then just felt really good. I mean, they still they feel good now. I'm just looking at the list here. The last time we had a kinetic precision frame was the 7th Seraph carbine, which itself was a a refresh from previous season, way back in Warmind. Before that, Firefright, then Tiger Spite, and then Braytech Werewolf. We're talking quite older weapons now, yeah, it was a solid auto rifle back then. But seeing potential onslaught back on it, some random rolls might bring it out for a little spin.
Yeah, I hit almost 10,000 kills on my original Breakneck copy. Oof. So safe to say that I was pretty bummed when it got sunset, and then, or I think Onslaught got changed and then it got sunset. So I'm really hoping that we see an Onslaught rework and it's just based on defeats and it's not quite as punishing as it used to be. That would be a huge win, in my opinion.
All right, something to look forward to here, but let's finally get into Crota's End, the raid, the reprisal here. So we're going to start with just a brief description of the loot table, what's dropping where, then we'll get into what kind of enemies you can expect, shields, noteworthy special enemies. You know how we do it when it comes to raids, and then we'll get into the activity pain points, some good to know information, build recommendations, and finally do our weapon breakdown. Saint, what does the loot table look like for Crota's End?
So starting off with the first encounter, aka the Abyss, we've got the Abyss Defiant Auto Rifle, Fang of Irute Scout, the Song of Irute Machine Gun, and on the armor side, you can get your chest piece, your legs, and your class item. And then second encounter for the bridge, we've got the Oversoul Edict Pulse Rifle, the Fang Scout again, Swordbreaker Shotgun, as well as chest and arms this time. The third encounter, Death Singer, we have the Oversoul Edict Pulse Rifle, Word of Crota Hand Cannon, Song of Irute Machine Gun, and then chest and arms again. And then the fourth encounter, Crota, Son of Oryx, Abyss Defiant Auto Rifle, Word of Crota Hand Cannon, the Swordbreaker Shotgun again, the Helm's Arm class items, as well as the Husk of the Pit kind of quest line, if you will, which is a guaranteed drop on your first Crota clear ever. So you're guaranteed to get this quest from the Sword Relic vendor as soon as you beat the raid for the first time. You get the Bottomless Pit quest line that will eventually turn this into an ally and eventually turn it into Necrochasm once you get enough essence of the Oversoul, which is kind of what I was referencing at the very beginning of the episode there. You need 20 of them total, and then I believe it's like another 15 after that to get the Catalyst. I can't exactly remember. You can get them via some raid triumphs. You can now get more via your just clears each week, and then you can also, if you're really lucky, you can get I think full stack of 20 to drop like immediately for you when you kill Crota, which is kind of like just getting the exotic itself to drop instantly, which is really cool to see. We'll talk more about Necrochasm a little bit later though. Court, what can you tell us about some unique enemies and stuff like that we will see within this raid?
Yeah, so kick us off here. We've got shields. We've got solar, and on the master side, we've also got arc. So I think the knights in master will always have a arc shield compared to just normal, where it'll be solar. For the other combatants, wizards. We've got champions, quite a few actually in raid. We've got barrier knights for the normal encounter normal encounter 2. So just as a reminder, for season 22, you've got auto rifle, bow, you've got exotics, arbalist, Ariana's Vow, Lament, Vision Zero, Wish Ender, and Titans have their second chance shield throw, and the ability sandbox, Solar Radiant, Void, Volatile rounds, and Strand Unravel rounds. pretty easy to deal with barrier knights, especially at a normal difficulty. Might be a little bit of a tricky one in a master. I know in the second encounter can be a bit chaotic with the amount of ads that are spawning and those kind of infinite spawning barrier knights. Not as infinite compared to Vow of the Disciple with the Overload champions, if you've ever been through that. Horrible. We've also got Unstoppable Ogres. So yeah, we've got two types of champions here. Over on the normal side, you'll just have that at the end of Encounter 1. And on the Master side, you'll also have it in Encounter 1. Additionally, you'll have it in Encounter 2, which replaces the Fissure Ogres, again, at the end of that particular encounter once you've all crossed the bridge. And Encounter 4, which replaces the Ogres that spawn with the Swordbreaker. And again, Season 22, you've got fusion rifles, you've got scout rifles to counter them, and of course you've got Bastion, Devil's Ruin, Leviathan's Breath, Malfeasance, and Solar Hunters can use Athos's Embrace with the weighty throwing knife. And the ability sandbox, you've got Arc Blind, Solar Ignition, Stasis, Freeze into Shatter, and Strand Suspend. In terms of like special enemies, we've got quite a few. They are unique looking. Most of them are unique looking, especially when it comes to the Swordbreaker Hive Knight and the Gatekeeper Hive Knight. Now, both of these are mini boss tiers. Kind of cast your mind back to previous episodes. When it's a mini boss, they can be crowd controlled. So suspended, frozen, blinded will come into play later on when we talk about Encounter 2 and 4. You'll also have the Fissure Ogres, which again are mini boss tier. They are in Encounter 2. Blistered Knight, that's in Encounter 3. Again, mini boss tier. You've got the Shield Singer of Ur-Yut, which is a wizard. Once again, it's a mini boss tier in Encounter 3. And you've got the Streakers, which are also mini boss, but they also count as, quote, vehicles, or as I call them, constructs. So you can use either major or boss spec against those ones, but probably not going to be using much damage against them, because that's when we'll talk about Encounter 3 in terms of how the Shriekers work. You're not really going to be beating them. You're going to avoid them at all costs. All right, Impetus, you want to kick us off with the Abyss?
Yes, so this is our first proper encounter. It's going to be in the dark. And really, again, we're not going to be given an actual strategic breakdown, just some tips and tricks here. So first tip, of course, try and stick together with the fire team. This seems to be the encounter that is tripping up a lot of LFG teams. And I think that's probably just because folks are coming in with different expectations, different wants and priorities here. This encounter is not difficult, and I'm not trying to be elitist in saying that. I'm just truly trying to say that communication is going to be the stumbling block for most teams here. It's not actually the game that's going to be the challenge. You can get through the encounter pretty quickly with the right movement abilities and the gear, but if you're not on the same page with your teammates, it's just going to cause way more headache than it's worth, and it's not worth any headache. It's a very simple look to the next lamp, countdown, everyone moves at the same time. That's really it. That's all you need to do. That not a lot is being asked of you here, but I think a lot of people are just saying, my timer's going down. I'm on the timer. It's my life that matters, not the rest of my fire team. I'm going. They die to something stupid. They fall in a hole. They get killed by a lamp, and now everyone else is stressing out trying to get that res point. Last thing I'll say about another tip here: the secret chest that's in this encounter. If you time things out correctly, you can pretty easily grab that secret chest while you do the encounter normally. You just move as normal until you reach the 5th lamp. Before you go up the hill, you want to go to the left, the path to the left, and you'll be able to get to that door pretty easily. And then just make your way back to the path after everyone's grabbed it and lighten that 5th lamp to extend the timer. And then you just carry on as usual here. So again, as long as everybody's on the same page, this is not meant to be, and it is not, a difficult activity. You go stand on the plate at the end, you get to meet the unstoppable ogres, say hello, blind them, ignite them, shatter them, take care of business, and then you just run into the glowing hallway. It's not meant to be a challenge. And again, with the kind of builds that we're about to recommend, the enemies are definitely not going to be the problem. It's mostly going to be somebody didn't, pick up the chalice appropriately and a player died, or a lamp came out of nowhere, or you eager edged into a thrall that was way out of the way, and now you're in the darkness and you got to catch up to the rest of the fire team. Be smart. Right. It's really all that it takes. If you've played the encounter before, you know what we're talking about. But if you haven't and you're going into there, make sure everyone on your fire team is on the same page with how you're going to behave in the first encounter. The first encounter is probably going to be the hardest encounter if you're trying to go flawless. Honestly, you get past this point, everything else is going to be pretty straightforward. I was saying this to Saint before we started recording. Like, this is not a difficult raid to flawless as long as you can get through the first encounter. Without anybody dying, without anybody being stupid, probably is the better way to say it. But yeah, it's kind of a fun raid in the sense that once you get past this point, you're mostly in the clear. The damage checks, especially on the normal difficulty, aren't too strict. So yeah, this is where you figure out if this is the team that you want to run the rest of the raid with, right here, encounter 1. Let's talk weapon and build recommendations here. Primary is pretty much anything. This is not meant to be too challenging. You do need to be aware of the unstoppable champions. Of course, you could run a fusion rifle in your special slot for that, or one of the various exotic weapons, or in the case of Hunter's exotic armor that we recommended earlier. As for your heavy option, again, if everybody's on the same page, you could do a sword with eager edge for speed strats, or if you are going to take it slow and just run through it the way that God intended, a machine gun for ad clear is pretty much all you need, as you're going to be dealing with a lot of thrall. Even some thrall that have a lot more health than normal, they still go down quite easily. So I think I've only ever used a machine gun. I don't trust myself with eager edge swords, and I do just fine. Court, what do hunters have for some nice and simple options for getting through the abyss?
Pretty much anything that's ad clear, so we're thinking Arc Jolt, also thinking new this season with Strand, if you've got that unlocked. We've got Whirlwind Maelstrom, which is the threadling that went to university and got a degree. It's doing some serious work, especially in ad dense activity, especially here. I was using this day one. It was just doing some great wonders. Using it with, I think it was Thread of Fury, which gives back melee energy. And also using Grapple. Grapple's a great, maybe more for, as a backup compared to, as Impetus was saying there, like, as long as if everyone's on the same board here in terms of, are we going to speed through it, or are we just going to take our time? I was using Grapple only as a kind of last resort, like if I'm lagging behind, or just, I've kind of missed one of my jumps and I'm about to hit one of the holes that are spread across the encounter arena here. But yeah, anything ad clear. Super doesn't really matter here. If you want to go arc, then I think this is a very high use case for Arc Staff compared to Gathering Storm, but you'll do pretty well with anything here. Tether is another kind of great shout out, just to kind of, if you've got a lot of ads that are spawning in, if you're doing your master run here, if they ever add in contest mode again, then I think just being able to pin everything in place with a shot tether or something like stasis, it's all pretty much good to use here. Titans, what are we thinking?
I'm going arc if I'm going for speed. I mean, you have amplified speed boost, you've got dash, shoulder charge, Fist of Havoc. You can just spam shoulder charge the whole time you're in Fist of Havoc and get around really quickly. But honestly, most of the time, I'm looking more towards trying to keep all of my teammates alive. I just finished up my 10th Sherpa run for that Lantern's emblem, which, if you look closely at the Sherpa emblem, it's very clearly a picture of the Lantern's encounter for a reason, I believe, because this is the one that is probably going to take your new players just the hardest time to get through, because they don't know the path, they don't know where all the traps are, they don't know where the death chandeliers are coming from. So in those cases, I tend to run Solar and Strand a lot more. Solar, you've got healing aids. You see your learning player get hit by a death chandelier, just throw a healing grenade on them. They're like immediately back in the fight. Alternatively, you've got Banner of War, Into the Fray, just throwing a tangle, giving everybody Woven Mail, which really high uptime for really high just a potency defensive abilities there. And that is definitely my recommendation. If you're not, it's basically like speed or keep the team safe. And yeah, I mean, I think that either one of those will get you through really easily. Warlocks.
Yeah, Strand would be a great option for Warlocks, but I think the Hunters and the Titan kits for this encounter are a lot more effective. I would say, nothing against my precious Threadlings, but one of the things that I've noticed for this encounter that really shine is going to be Arc Souls on Arc or Sunbracers on Solar Warlock. Arc Souls, you've got the whole fire team grouped up around the lantern. You pop a rift down. Everybody's going to walk through it on accident. It's going to be pretty hard to avoid. Having those Arc Souls up is going to be very nice for just taking care of all of your enemies. I like running Sunbracers because, again, if I have a new player on the fire team, they're learning the path for the first time, I'll get a melee kill and then just light up the path to the next lantern with the solar grenades. I don't even use them on the thralls. I mean, eventually a thrall will run into them as we start progressing to the next lantern, but once you start getting into sections where there are going to be holes and other things, maybe some slight bumps and stuff that might slow somebody down who's going through for the first time, I like to outline those areas with solar grenades. Sunbracers is the easiest way to do that. So that is my recommendation there. If you do, of course, know the path, everyone on the fire team knows the path, then just go crazy with solar grenades. Throw them wherever you want. You're going to hit an enemy. There's always pretty much something to hit in here. And Ad Clear is the name of the game. Very straightforward, very simple, should not be a challenge. Just communicate with the fire team before you actually start running so that we all know what to expect and nobody starts yelling at one another when somebody scoots ahead or is taking too long to cross. That's the first encounter. Let's move on to the second encounter, the bridge encounter. Saint, what are our tips for this one?
It's just really pretty straightforward encounter. I think the only thing that you really need to worry about or that could potentially throw you off is just having one of your early players across the bridge die. So if you if you're going to be the first across the bridge, just run some type of defensive kit, a suspend kit, a freeze, kit, a slow, build, whatever it is that you have. Just make sure that your first player across has that really good defensive stunning capability. Those gatekeepers are susceptible to just about every kind of debuff, so it's a bit of your choice there, but this will also help keep new players safe, especially, again, you're Sherpaing people, you're with some players that are relatively new to the raid. If that first player across has a way to slow these gatekeepers down, it's just going to make it easy for the entire rest of that fight to just flow really quickly after that point. And plus, that kind of speeds things up, because if you're able to slow the gatekeepers down, you're able to kill them faster, which means more sword bearers are spawning in faster, which just speeds up the whole flow of the encounter. In this encounter, we have some barrier knights, which means you'll need an anti-barrier weapon. We've got auto rifles, bows, Wish Ender, Revision 0, all kinds of stuff like that. Even Arbalest if you want to go down to that route. Blinding grenade launchers are also really strong, again, for stunning our kind of focused enemy sword bearers, gatekeepers. And then after that, maybe a fusion rifle or GL to just clear out some ads. And there's no real boss here, so probably just going to keep on my machine gun from the first encounter if I've been clearing out ads with that. You don't really need a sword to move around a ton. You'll be getting a hive sword anyways that you can fly around with, so just not really a ton of use there. Machine guns just really trivialize standing on the plates and killing a lot of enemies. Court, what are you bringing into the bridge?
A lot of crowd control here, as I mentioned a few moments ago. So we're talking like suppression, slow and freeze, and suspend. I think especially suspend with hunters using Widow Silk for that additional grenade ability charge. Obviously, a few of the fragments got tweaked for Season 22. Suspend's not as potent as before, but we're not necessarily using Suspend against the champions. We're using it against the named enemies here, like your gatekeepers and your sword bearers. So that's my kind of go-to. I can remember the day one experience and then kind of runs after that, I've always been either the first person over or the second person over, and my job there is to then just keep suspending the spawning gatekeepers, just to keep them kind of pinned in place, and then kind of almost like a auxiliary kind of support kind of base build here, as I've talked about. Kind of stasis and suspend before are really great on Hunter to kind of focus on that type of synergy. Saint, what we vibing with Titans?
Yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye Strand kit on as well. Banner of War, you can really just not go wrong with that. It makes it pretty hard to die in a lot of these cases. If you want the ranged way to keep that up, if you're going to be sending on a plate, Fletch Storm makes that really easy if you don't have a ton of enemies nearby, or Into the Fray if you want to just be getting a little extra in Woven Mail. You can even wait for some enemies to rush your plate, kill them, grab the Tangle, and then throw it at your friendly player that is going in to kill their Gatekeeper or whatever it may be, which is also another really easy way to allow you to be really aggressive against the Gatekeepers with pretty much no risk, which is great. Impetus?
Yeah, I think the best option I can recommend here would be Shadebinder. That's Stasis Warlock with Osmiomancy Gloves having a second turret up. It's going to be really helpful for keeping the Barrier Knights at a distance, just, pardon the pun, slowing them down, because they can get quite aggressive once you're still standing on the plates at the beginning to build up that bridge, and then once you move over, standing on the plate to keep the bridge up as you're ferrying people over. So that can be really helpful. Again, on the master difficulty with the Unstoppables at the very end, freezing them with the turret and then having them shatter out of that is going to be helpful for stunning the champion as well. But yeah, I think the kit for Stasis Warlock is going to be pretty great while you're dealing with those champions and getting folks moving across, or if you want to be the person that goes across for second or third, and you're kind of by yourself over there with not a lot of support, just dealing with the enemies over there. But again, not a difficult encounter. Just get your order down, have your roles assigned, and you'll be good to go. This should not be too challenging. There aren't as many boss enemies, and the really tough enemies, you have a very specific way of defeating them, and you can have your allies help you crowd control those enemies as you're working through them with the sword at the end there. So should not be a challenge. Let's move on to some boss fights. Court, what do we have in Encounter 3?
Yeah, it's our first boss fight for the raid here, and it is our Ute. Very, very different compared to Destiny 1. I can remember this was often kind of referred to as quite a throwaway encounter. But they've really changed that. Out of everything that they've added into Reprise Crota's End, our Ute's the most changed, and it's a fully fleshed out encounter, and it feels really great to experience, especially day one. But anyway, so when it comes to, I think our first pain point of the raid here is there's going to be a lot of ads. Even in normal modes, it's still quite overwhelming if you're not kind of experienced to kind of really a lot of ad spawns. Again, in master and contest modes, it's ramped up even more. But normal mode, you can still get overwhelmed here, even if you're doing quite acceptable damage to anything. So again, it's bringing in anything that kind of does ad clear. We're talking like volt shot from SMGs or auto rifles, suppression, stasis, Strand, just kind of really control the battlefield here. In terms of tips here, when we're actually doing the encounter, I think some of this has been kind of communicated through various guides, but just for our sake, we'll just kind of make it very clear. You can do this encounter normally via, utilizing your either True Sight or using your radar. I would suggest True Sight, because radar can be a little bit funky, especially when there's shriekers or wizards kind of stacked on top of each other, when you've kind of labeled out each of the towers here. So yeah, our utes, wizards, and shriekers can be visually detected via the two ways. That's radar. So shriekers on your radar use a filled-in circle rather than just taking up one of the sort of the chevrons or the pie slice off the radar. When it comes to True Sight, which is a pretty often forgotten about tech, you can use True Sight to see enemy signatures through physical objects from a distance of up to 64 meters. It's quite a long range here. With it being quite a small area, a small encounter, you should be able to see those wizards and shriekers from a fair distance away. So these outlines are painted visually, almost like a wispy rose pink coloured silhouette that pulsate every 1 second. And the amount of time that you have True Sight really depends on what trigger has given you True Sight. So primarily it's all Void Hunters that have access to this, funnily enough. So you style as Executioner, that's killing enemies afflicted by suppression, volatility, or weaken, casts yourself into invisibility, and it provides True Sight for 4 seconds. Void Hunters have Spectral Blades with your super. When you're invisible via the heavy attack, the duration lasts until you're no longer invisible. You can reproc that by using heavy attack again, or until your super ends. Hunters also have Kepri Sting, again for the Void Sandbox. Dealing damage with a smoke bomb grants True Sight for 3 seconds. And probably what everyone's going to be using here is Wish Ender, and that's when you aim down the sight, when you're actually drawing your bow here, and you get True Sight for the duration of that draw, and which can be held indefinitely with Hunters Oathkeepers. Massive tip here. I know you were probably going to. I'll let Imtis go a little bit more detail here in regards to Senative Mask, but the big tip here is there's a lot of mini bosses in this encounter. So if you do have a Warlock, do use Senative Mask. But I'll let Imtis talk about that shortly. In terms of weapons and builds, yeah, of course you want to get your good old Divinity user here to get that the crit cage, because our Utes, she moves around a lot, and she's a small target
though, huh?
So Divinity pretty much is a must here. When it comes to heavies, when we're talking about DPS, there's been a lot of conversation here, especially when day one was a thing, of what was like. Uryu was the big damage check. She was the what's the
skill check?
The war priest of this raid.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I've seen a lot of conversation in terms of what damage rockets can be a play here. We've got that in the script here. I wouldn't recommend it because if you miss your rocket, you might as well put something else on, like a machine gun, Thunderlord. I've been using Leviathan's Breath here. Leviathan's does do a lot of damage. It's had such a great kind of uptick in terms of positivity when it comes to being used for damage checks. Any other weapons you guys would suggest? I don't know who put rockets in here. What's your vibe when it comes to rockets?
I hear you on the missing, your DPS just goes through the floor. You do need to have some pretty good trigger discipline and be patient on her movements. So yeah, she's pretty small target and she's going to move around a lot. Your best bet is to wait for her to kind of do a little bit of a movement. You got enough time to get about a shot or two off, and you'll kind of see her moving again. She sometimes will get recoiled back and just stunned by taking enough damage. So it definitely does require some trigger discipline there to be actually landing all of your rockets. But yeah, if you're able to get, your bait and switch rocket going off, it is very high ceiling, very punishing when you miss. And I think the only other thing I've used here was Xenophage, because I happened to have it on from the encounter before when we were doing the Triumph, where you have to kill all the knights from the bridge, the opposite side of the bridge, which is really fun, by the way. But yeah, and that was fine. I haven't tried Thunderlord. need to go back and check on that. I honestly haven't used it since its lightning strikes got nerfed. Like
it's not as good
season.
It's definitely not as good as before. I only said Thunderlord is if you don't really have a great rocket launcher, if you're missing those shots, you might as well put on Thunderlord as your kind of backup. But it's definitely not the go-to anymore. It's not the best exotic kind of DPS weapon nowadays. I was going to say, actually, just on the light of talking about Leviathan's Breath, I would also suggest your kind of bait and switch Cataclysmic, get that dusted off, because that's got its, it's a fairly long damage cycle here. So, LFRs do have their place in the game. It's just quite a small place now. But I think here they do some respectable damage.
You can even hip fire and really easily hit almost all of your shots with that thing. That's a good shout out.
Which LFR has Surrounded? Is that Briar's Contempt? Because you can proc Surrounded in this one. The enemies will come. In fact, you'll probably end up killing a few Thrall with your Briar's Contempt, because they will be all up on you while you're doing damage. So this is honestly the damage phase made for a Surrounded roll of Briar's Contempt here. Yeah. The thought just came to me here. I don't really care about my heavy weapon because I'm always rocking Divinity because I love my fire team and I'm a support player, and I'm not mad at all that we have yet another Divinity encounter in a Destiny 2 raid. So, yep, that's my contribution.
For hunters, super wise. Ordinarily, as we've been talking here, I would recommend Gathering Storm, but are you? She's small, she's bouncy, she bobs about. So I'd recommend either Tether or Golden Gun with Star Eaters. Missing that Gathering Storm is such a sink compared to maybe missing one Golden Gun shot, but getting two, at least you're putting some damage in there. And if you're using Tether for a debuff, if someone else isn't using Trapped Cannon or they're not using a weaken here, then Tether's still a great option, especially to Impetus's point there about ads just kind of coming up and getting in your way. Get down, Madam President here. It's a place where I would be like, well, if you can land your Gathering Storm, good for you, but maybe swap off and do Tether or Golden Gun here. For Titans, I see we've got a new exotic here. Well, how are you vibing with that there?
Pyrogale is back on the menu. This was not an option for a while because it was kind of breaking the game just minorly, but that's fine. It's all been fixed out. And it is a really easy way for you to just deal a massive amount of chunk damage, especially if you're getting that Roaring Flames stacked up. My gosh, man, you can really put out some chunk damage here, especially if you start the damage encounter, you immediately start doing DPS with your other weapons. Your damage output is going to be very high, not going to be super hard to do a one phase this boss like that. Your other option, because you are surrounded, like Impetus mentioned, you can use Synthoceps and do like a really melee focused build. I think this is like a little more niche, a little less necessary in a full fire team of 6, but Banner of War, Synthoceps, 1-2 punch, shotgun, you can grapple melee, and here your Titan is really going to be able to do a massive amount of melee damage with this setup. Not super necessary, but really fun, especially if you are looking to do some low main content. This allows you to tractor cannon and then still do an insane amount of damage at the same time, which we'll talk about a little more in the next encounter. But Impetus, I'll let you round it out here.
Yes, so as we've said before, Cenotaph Mask is pretty much the star of the show for Warlocks here. All of the Blistered Knights drop heavy ammo after they've been tagged by a Trace Rifle. Again, we're going to recommend Divinity, but if somebody else on the team wants to do a Legendary or a different exotic for whatever reason, they're welcome to do that as well. as long as they have Cenotaph on. And the nice thing here, of course, is the environment in which you fight Ir is the exact same environment that you fight Crota. So as long as you do, well, when you successfully complete the encounter, you're just going to stick around to fight Crota. He'll get summoned into that arena, which means if you have any leftover heavy bricks, those will just stick around as well. So you can, of course, make use of the rally banner to get the Crota fight off to the races there. You get everything filled up on your abilities and your ammo, but if you don't end up doing a one phase of Crota, or if you're especially in the master difficulty of Crota and you're probably locked into at least a 2 or a 3 phase there, you've got extra heavy from all those old blistered knights from the previous encounter down. So this is really nice to just set up your fire team for success for both the current 3rd encounter and then the 4th and final encounter when you guys get around to that. If you have more than one Warlock on the team, you've already got your Divinity user rocking Cenotaph Mask. You could, of course, bring in Lunafaction Boots, throw that down to help with your fire team's reload speed once you do get to damage phase 4 Ir as well. So those are my 2 recommendations. On the ability side, it's a raid boss in Destiny 2. I think we all know what the Warlocks are going to be rocking. It's Well of Radiance here. Surprise, surprise. Feel free to go either all into healing, or if you want to lean into a little bit of damage. Warlocks are probably going to be the stars of the show during the mechanics part of it, because you don't want to have your Cenotaph Mask or your Lunafaction folks off doing the actual mechanic of the Ir going to look for the wizards. You want to have them ready to go for damage, so that when it does start, they can put those wells down and get to work. So you're going to be kind of back there by the main crystal there, just clearing out ads. Again, if you want to go the healing route, it depends on how many players you want to have. This is a conversation you'll need to have with your fire team. You can be healing people, or you can be doing something like a solar grenade or a fusion grenade, just doing damage. The actual specifics of the abilities outside of your supers will depend on what role your fire team needs you to fulfill. But yes, you're absolutely running Well of Radiance. Don't you dare run something like Bug Barrage and blind anyone who's trying to do the Divinity Ball on your Ute. That was painful, painful to look at, but. No, I think Strand Warlock could work, but I would really only recommend Strand Warlock if you have at least 2 other Well of Radiance Warlocks. Again, on the normal difficulty, you can pretty easily one phase, but again, for Master, where that maybe is not a guarantee, I would prioritize Well, and if it's really just damage that you guys are struggling with and a damage super is needed, maybe have a 3rd Warlock, if that exists, go over to Bug Barrage, as I will call it from now on. All right. Let's get to the big dog himself, the son of Oryx, Crota in Encounter 4. Don't have a lot of specific tips to recommend, but we do have one big one here. If you haven't heard about it yet, buckle up. Swords have a 35% intrinsic buff to Crota. That's a damage buff, by the way. So that is the big weapon recommendation for what to use against Crota himself. Shout out to Mossy Max. You can go check out his work on figuring out what weapons are optimal to use against Crota in the Destiny spreadsheets link tree for more of his content, as well as links to his socials, because he is always throwing out fun tips and tricks for various pieces of PvE content as he's doing his research over on his social media. So yes, swords are an excellent option. I see people using shotguns as well, Legend of Acreus and Tractor Cannon. Again, that's also an option, but we do want to provide you with a pretty big heads up here that swords definitely have a pretty massive help going into this fight, just due to the nature of the encounter, on top of course, any surges and damage perks that you might have on specific swords. So as a heads up, again, swords have that 35% intrinsic buff to Crota. Kind of, it fits thematically, of course. Crota has a sword himself, so it's pretty cool that Bungie is kind of leaning towards us using swords against him, both to bring down the shield and then to damage him. So that is our big tip here when it comes to weapon and build recommendations. Again, primaries and specials, I don't think there's a need for something specific here. Obviously, we do have Unstoppable Ogres in the Master Encounter. Fusion Rifles do have that this season. They're going to be pretty great. I'm already using a Fusion Rifle just as a backup damage option for Crota should I run out of ammo on my sword or my shotgun. So yet another reason to bring in some sweet fusion rifle action here. Primaries, really whatever you want. It's a pretty small boss encounter, so I don't think you need something super long range. But yeah, you're going to be pretty up close to a lot of enemies. And then again, heavies. Do decide with your team if you want to go all swords or want to do maybe a mix between swords and shotguns or all shotguns here. One thing you'll absolutely want to have is tractor cannon. You do not need divinity at all. You're going to be up close and personal. Don't even worry about crit spots. That's not the point of this fight. What is the point, though, is getting a debuff on there, and it is worth it for one of your players to be running tractor cannon as their exotic weapon of choice. So I would probably say make it a support player. It's typically going to be a warlock. So if you got somebody on the team with well, have them run up, hit Crota with the tractor cannon, pop that well either on the ground, on his back, depending on how the strats play. Have maybe another warlock with a well, pop the well while you hit him with tractor cannon. Again, you can play out that sequence with your fire team there, but it just makes sense to have support players running a support weapon here, and then they can swap over to, again, fusion rifles or shotguns to actually do damage, and then reapply tractor cannon after that 10 seconds has expired. So that's really the most specific weapon recommendations that we can give. We'll move over to classes and supers here. Court, what are hunters bringing to kill Crota?
Well, just on the note of swords there has been some kind of commentary and discussion about which is the best sword to bring in here. And weirdly, it's not what you think. It's actually the hunter sword. It's the lightweight, curated sword for hunters, Gold Tusk. If you do and I'm not actually familiar with this tech, I do need to kind of research into this, but as it stands, the aerial combo is doing a much better overall DP or damage compared to Lament, compared to even Surrounded Bequest. So if you've got one of those lying around, it is something that you potentially can get and craft. I'm not sure if you can acquire red boxes now, but I've got one, so I'm going to try this out at some point. But in terms of like the best sword, I think Lament's just sort of your go-to. Lament's a really solid sword overall, with the whole kind of healing on swings. Could maybe talk about the actual the combo with Lament in a future episode. If we're talking about DPS strats, I think that would be a good time to talk about Lament in terms of what's the best combo. So we won't flood up today's episode with that. But yeah, the next best option, if you've got it, is a Raid Sword. Bequest Vorpal Weapon is your best option. You can play around with Surrounded with Bequest, but because there's not a lot of ads that spawn, you kind of have to be in a specific spot for Surrounded Bequest to do some really good work, and it absolutely does, with that having 10 more impact compared to other swords. But yeah, those are your options. So for hunters, in terms of super, pretty simple here. Again, just going to suggest Gathering Storm. Crota is obviously a much larger target. You stun him in place. And yeah, it's pretty much your go-to here with Starter Scales. Probably not going to recommend something like Tether if someone else is using Tractor Cannon. It's a bit of a wasted super here. If you're more inclined to use Golden Gun or Blade Barrage, you can use that as well. You could potentially use Silk Strike if you're using the Strand kind of neutral game elsewhere in the encounter. It's still a great super overall, but definitely my pick when it comes to just pure raw damage. It's Gathering Storm. Titans, I notice we've got Pyrogale back on the menu.
Yeah, I'm going to be keeping this on, especially, I mean, usually I'm running the same thing from Irute into Crota, and the only switch that I make is I really like to run healing nades here, and I like to put on my tractor cannon to give the warlocks a bit of a break on the support role. The reason I mentioned healing nades specifically is because this gives you a little bit of an extra window when you jump in there, but you're a Titan with a massive flaming gauntlet, so you don't have a well, but you can throw yourself a healing grenade kind of right at Crota's feet. So when you jump in there and you hit off tractor cannon, and then your teammates land with their swords to take his shield down, it is just enough to give you that bit of extra healing to make sure that you guys all stay alive in the few seconds before that well goes down. And then in combination with that, I've been using the high impact fusion at choice. I know, Impetus, you mentioned fusion rifles. Right now, for me, the best one I have is a loaded question with that envious assassin and then the controlled burst role. I would love to get a better Nox perennial like our boy Scotty G, but my RNG is just not like that these days. So maybe you can craft a new Aramite, though. Also, another weapon that we were gushing about just a few weeks back is really good. Couple of bursts from that, maybe one to the Oversoul before damage phase really gets underway, and then one at the very end there will be enough to pop that. So that's kind of my usual rotation of healing nade, tractor cannon. I'm going to wait for his shield to come down. I'm going to pyro gale, which if you time it outright, killing some boomers up in the tower or something like that, you should have up at least 2 stacks of roaring flames, which again is what is really going to send your pyro gale damage kind of to the moon there. So you want to make sure that you can stack that up if you are able. And then just, hitting some fusion rifle shots. You can get a ridiculous amount of shots in the mag if you're using that envious assassin in the pre-phase, using your primary to kill off a bunch of those thrall and wizards, etc., etc. Impetus?
Warlocks, we are looking at Lunafaction boots, I would say, are probably going to be the most helpful here, especially if you're using shotguns for that increased reload speed. Other than that, Boots of the Assembler would be a really great option. Again, due to the kind of behavior of the fight, Crota does get stunned, but he will kind of rise to his feet after a few seconds here, and then he can start moving around. On top of that, if you are using swords, there are scenarios where you can kind of find yourself getting flung around if you're in the middle of a combo, especially if you're up in the air trying to land that aerial combo, which means you could find yourself outside of a well. So for that case, I like to recommend Boots of the Assembler just to keep the rest of my fire team members, should they end up leaving the well, or should Crota end up moving out of the range of the well, healed, because when he does go to do that sword slam, it can kill guardians even on the normal difficulty of the raid. It's definitely going to be an issue on the master difficulty, so having those little healing support orbs seek out my fire team members while we're doing damage is going to be life-saving. On top of that, I could also run healing grenade. Again, this is kind of, you do want to have a dedicated support fire team member here. Really just leaning into that. It will be worth it to have you give up damage just to keep the rest of the fire team alive. We're going to be up close and personal, and Crota does fight back and hit hard during damage. So you do need to be aware of that. If you're feeling pretty good on your fire team staying alive and you do want to lean into damage, you do have Sanguine Alchemy. That did get reworked. It does provide 2 free stacks of weapon surges to your subclass matching weapons. When you stand in any rift or well, you do not have to place those down. That can be quite nice for giving yourself a little bit of extra space in your leg slot, your mod slots there, for getting the most out of your weapons. You just need to match the weapon element to your ability element there. Again, do have a few options. You don't need to run Cenotaph Mask. There are enemies, of course, that you could tag to keep generating heavy ammo, but ideally you'll still have plenty of heavy ammo generated from your Ear Ute clear, just the encounter before. I don't even think this is much of a struggle too much, even during contest and challenge clears, the ammo side of things, but I think it would probably make a little bit more sense maybe to even run Aeons than necessarily, because you don't need Divinity here, so you'd be running a different kind of trace rifle, and that may not make the most amount of sense to do that. So yeah, I think you'd probably be better off running Aeons if ammo were to be an issue for some of your fire teams. But Lunafactions, I'd say, are take highest priority. Again, the ability stuff is pretty straightforward. Run well, and then configure your abilities to what the fire team needs. Boots of the Assembler would be a nice shout out there if you need some help giving your fire team kind of health assistance once they end up outside of the well. Sanguine Alchemy if you really, really want to do some extra damage. Again, if you're on a fire team with a lot of warlocks, you've already got the well stuff covered. You could go over to Strand, pop a Needle Storm into Crota for extra super damage. That would also work as well. It's your call there, but default to well when you're joining the fire team, as we have been doing for quite some time now. But it works because it is the most effective option available. All right, that wraps up our encounters breakdown here. Just a few last final things. What times are we expecting teams to complete? This is not a long one. We got 4 encounters. The first 2, again, if everybody's on the same page, the first 2 encounters should go quite quickly. Boss ones, that can take a little bit longer, just as people are kind of getting their damage, their personal damage in sync with the rest of the fire team here. First time clear, saying what you've been the Sherpa here. You just got your emblem. What were you seeing in your runs when you were leading people through for the first time?
I would say on average, you're probably looking at an hour and a half. If you got 4 experienced players and 2 Sherpies, so to say, maybe 2 hours if things are really not going well. Again, like last night was our last one, and we got through it. I want to say about 65 minutes, just over an hour, and that was really smooth. That was doing everything almost first try with the explanation kind of time padded in there, and all that stuff. So yeah, I would say if you get your first clear in about an hour and a half, that would definitely be really good. Maybe 2 hours at most. And then after that, you can really start getting your time down there. I think. I don't know. We fastest runs yet, you guys?
I'd have to look. I can't remember off the top of my head, but definitely sub hour. I mean, that's not. You can get well under an hour, but yeah, sub hour should be kind of the standard, I would say.
Yeah, I'm thinking 45 minutes if you're with a consistent group it's not crazy at all. That is very achievable. Court?
Yeah, fastest for me, I'm just looking at raid report. Bang on 1 hour.
Okay.
Yeah. I definitely could improve that. I think that was one of the more kind of earlier runs, whereas we've been maybe doing some challenge or triumph, I should say, just to knock them out.
What are we thinking is the most taxing area, the most difficult encounter segment of the raid?
I mean, you hinted this at a little bit early on, but man, that opening, there's no part that is going to be more difficult, especially like doing some Sherpas or anything like that, than just getting everybody through the abyss alive. And which is why that, those defensive builds are so key. Those really high uptime healing builds are so key if you're trying to get people through that first encounter for the first time. They don't know the path. They don't know where all the pits are and death lamps are swinging in from, all that stuff.
I'd have to agree.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. I think when it comes to maybe like a master run, or again, if we ever do get contest again, I would say our Ute, because of just the sheer amount of ads that spawn. Again, that's one of my kind of reasons why I would recommend like an ad clearing build for hunters. Your combination blow, maybe liar's handshake in there. Just if everyone's not on the same kind of on the same level, again, just talking about communication here again. It can just get very overwhelming. If people aren't prepared to swap the chalice on time, the runner who's kind of identifying all the safe places to kill the wizards. I would say that if it's a master run, but with anything, once you get your runs in, you can really tighten down the experience.
Yeah, I'd have to say it's like you get past that first encounter, you're in the clear, even if it may not feel like that after how much time it takes you guys to kind of get on the same page. But again, communication does feel like it's kind of the biggest hindrance to a lot of people doing raids. This is definitely not a no mic situation here. You are going to want to be talking to people for that first encounter. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time.
Bad time. To Court's point, you have your scout die on your Ute. Now they're no longer enlightened. Now you need to get another guy enlightened. Now you need somebody to go res this person. And it just, that can really like throw a wrench right into that thing. Just one person dying that's enlightened in the wrong moment. Just does not feel good.
How are we feeling about the raid, the reprise? I know you guys both played it, of course, back in the original form. This is my first time playing it. I like it. I think I don't know if I'd say it's my favorite, but it is, it feels a lot closer to the standard of raids that we have in Destiny 2 than what it appeared to be in D1. But for those of you that have gotten to experience the old and the new, how's this one feeling?
My one critique is that the Abyss just feels kind of tedious with the way that the deposit points rotate. They don't stay the same where you need to deposit the chalice. And I do find that unpredictability eventually has gotten a little annoying, but other than that, really generally very good, I would say. And I know, Court, you had highly praised the Death Singer encounter and its changes, and man, I got to agree with that. As you're dead on with that.
Yeah, I don't know if you had the same vibe in Destiny 1 where it almost didn't feel like an encounter. It was still part of, or like it was like an intro to Crota's end. Crota's encounter. It just didn't feel like an actual encounter. You got loot from it, but that was it. The reprised in Destiny 1 with Age of Triumph, they did flesh out a little bit more, but it was still lacking. But in Destiny 2, they've completely 180'd it. And the whole vibe with Crota's End, I think we all were going into this kind of like, oh, they didn't bring back Wrath of the Machine. They've got Crota's End instead. This is going to be a bit of a... it's going to be pretty basic when it comes to day one. And I was part of day one, and it was certainly not basic. But that was great. It was fine. I loved that vibe of it was difficult, but it wasn't tedious. It wasn't like this is too simple. It wasn't like a Route of Nightmares where it was like, oh, you could just kind of roll through it. But it wasn't necessarily like an original. I'm talking like back in Shadowkeep days when I think that was one of my last major day one experiences where that was just pretty a Garden Salvation, I meant to say, that just it was pretty frustrating in terms of like a raid day one. But yeah, in terms of like post day one, still think we should get a contest mode modifier. I've been saying that throughout this episode because I want to replay that experience and just get better at like a day one experience with contest mode active. But the raid itself, I think in terms of its placement, certainly not like my favorite raids. I think that still goes to like Vow of the Disciple or even King's Fall, but it's up there. Like it's certainly if the raid team or like bunch of like massive breakdowns folk are like, oh, do you want to do a Crota's End? I'll be like, yeah, I'll do a Crota's End. It's a fun raid, really fun.
All right, let's get into these weapons that we've got. Mm-hmm. These have also been reprised, 6 of them. So we've got, of course, new origin trait. We've got 1 new perk, even, and we do have adept variants of these. As has been the case, all of the Crota Inn's weapons are craftable after obtaining 5 red-bordered drops. You can even buy one of those at the end of the week. You can also do the red boxed chest as well to increase those guaranteed chances. For the Adept variants, you do get these via the Master Challenge completion. The drop is RNG, and they are on a knockout system, plus they are purchasable at the Relic vendor. Enhancing perks on Adept weapons follows the same system from the Root of Nightmares Adept weapons. Only 1/3 and 1/4 perk, and those are unable to be swapped out, but you can enhance them. The Masterwork, the Barrels, and the Magazine perks can be swapped out, and once you do level up the Adept variant to rank 20, you do gain that small stat bump. All right, let's talk about this very fun, very thematic origin trait, Cursed Thrall. Court, what does Cursed Thrall do?
Yeah, so the description reads here, after defeating a target with a melee attack, final blows with this weapon cause targets to explode for a short duration. Technically, we've got some details here. So on any melee kill, so that's your powered or your uncharged melee, weapon kills cause the enemy to explode, dealing a weapon element matching damage over a 4.5 meter radius. This does scale with the combatant rank modifiers against combatants, and the duration lasts for 7.5 seconds. With the Origin Specialization Artifact perk for Season 22, if you've got that active, it goes up to 15 seconds. And it can be, as I mentioned, it can be activated by ranged melee abilities, throwing knife, mini hammer, all that jazz. Anything that's melee proc, it will give you this very fun explosion after a final blow.
This is a strong one. I like this a lot. Obviously, melee synergies we want to look out for as we go through these weapons. We'll call those to your attention, of course. But yeah, a little fun one here. Saint, do you want to cover our first weapon?
Yeah, we'll kick things off here with the Fang of Ir-Yût. It is a strand rapid-fire scout rifle, 260 RPM. You get that 0.8x reload scaler when the magazine is empty, or a 20% increase in your reload speed when the mag is empty. And yeah, man, 15 seconds also for a Curse Thrall to be up is just like nuts with that Origin trait modifier. I gotta say, it has been really, really enjoyable to play with. Well, let's talk about the stats on this thing, though. This is our first strand rapid fire scout rifle, so we don't have any direct competitors. Instead, we are going to compare it with Radi's throwing knife, a season 21 crucible weapon, and the servant leader, a season 15 gambit weapon, both kinetic rapid fire scout rifles. So same slot, but Ir-Yût is still a standout in that it is our first strand weapon of the rapid fire scout archetype. And it's bringing some heat along with it. It has got 32 range, which is the highest by 8 points, 44 stability, highest by 2 points, 26 handling, highest by 6 points, 35 reload speed, which is the highest by 6 again, 49 recoil direction, which is the lowest actually by 5 points. Randy's all the way up at 59, which honestly still is not great. It's 20 zoom, which is kind of a pro or a con depending on who you ask and how you want to use this weapon. The servant leader does have 26 zoom, which is ridiculously high, but Randy's is also at 20. So honestly, overall, just best in class stat package. Whenever we're looking at a few of these stats, like 32 range, which is the highest by 8 points, that sounds really strange, but remember, we were talking about a scout rifle here. Even just at 32 range, you're at a base of 70 meters before you're hitting the damage fall off. So even without any kind of range increasing, anything like that at 32 range, you're still going to have a lot of effective range. Now, when we look at some barrels and mags, which stats are we looking to increase? If range isn't a super concern here, we already have a lot there. I think I'm probably going to be going for something like a arrowhead break or a fluted. Arrowhead break is giving me recoil direction of 30 all the way up to 79, which is much better. Plus that 10 handling, which is going to help that out a lot, which even at 26, which is the highest, is still pretty low. And then fluted, of course, the +5 stability and +15 handling would also be quite nice for reining that in a little bit. Mag side, it kind of depends on some of my final traits there. I'm probably going to be going for something like high cal rounds. You could also go for ricochet or anti-barrier. I think after that, then the next thing I would consider maybe is flared magwell for +15 reload and +5 stability. But there are some third column traits here that are going to do a lot for our reload speed. So you're probably better off going with the rounds option of your choice in the mag slot. Speaking of our main traits here, we have got of note in column 3, shoot to loot, rewind rounds, rapid hit, and keep away. And then in column 4, we've got Golden Tricorn, new perk to this weapon set, Sword Logic, Precision Instrument, also new this season, and Hatchling, the go-to on the Strand primaries. Court, What are you going to be crafting on your Fang here? What are you looking for on Fang?
Quite a few juice perks here. Really looking at shoot to loot in the third column here, just for like your potential. This is pretty great for a scout rifle, obviously, but remember they did buff shoot to loot to also pick up orbs of power when you hit them. In terms of the fourth column, again, I'm going to gravitate to Golden Tricorn all the time whenever I see it, because it is one of my favorite perks here. And on Strand Hunter, we do have some really great options. You can proc Golden Tricorn through the grapple melee. You can proc it through the Thready Spike. Obviously, you're not going to really be using much potential with the grenade, so kind of similar with how Golden Tricorn rocks up on stasis weapons. You really only have your melee to do the work, but at least for hunters, we can grapple melee really successfully, and obviously Thready Spike. Sword logic's very interesting. I have seen some commentary about it's kind of like Rampage with extra steps, which I don't necessarily agree with. Just kind of a rabbit hole here. So weapon kills grant stacks of sword logic. The number of stacks and the buff duration are tied to the highest enemy rank killed since activation. So if you kill a rank and file enemy, it's 1 stack for 5.5 seconds. If you kill elites players, you get 2 stacks for 7.5 seconds. Mini bosses and players in their supers, you get 3 stacks for 10.5 seconds. And if you get a kill with this weapon on a boss, you get 4 stacks for 15.5 seconds. The damage stacks are respectively 15%, 25%, 35%, and 50% at 4 stacks. If you get kills, additional kills refresh the buff duration to the duration tied to the highest enemy rank killed. So if you get a kill with sword logic against the boss target, that's that 15.5 seconds with 50% damage increase, then you just refresh it with a rank and file enemy. It's going to keep it at the 4 stacks. It won't go down to 1 stack. It'll just be kept at 4 stacks. So I think folks have been kind of shrugging off sword logic. I think it's got a place within the game. I can see from like the offset, this might be a bit, it just looks like Rampage with extra steps. But once you get into the nitty gritty with sword logic, I think it's a great perk. Now, am I going to be killing bosses with a scout rifle? Probably not. Not really a thing that I'd be doing with a scout rifle. With other weapons that we'll talk about later on, that sword logic rolls on, yes. But for me, I think I'm just going to go for the good old classic combination of Golden Tricorn or Hatchling. Imtis, how are you vibing here?
It's got to be Hatchling. I'm good on a strand scout rifle. I have my pardon me. I have my Glissando 47 with reconstruction hatchling. Probably would service my needs perfectly till the end of the game. But hey, I'm going to be getting these to drop as I'm going to be doing the raid. Might as well go crazy, right, and craft something that I really want. I think I will probably end up going... do I go rewind rounds or do I go rapid hits? That's a tough one.
Your reload is already going to be semi-low because of your modifier, right? Your rapid fire modifier, which is
the
kind of
frame.
nice.
That's correct. Yeah. The nice thing, of course, with rewind is I can just keep hitting those precision shots there. I mean, I think rewind and say something like precision instrument might be the play for a little bit more damage out of a primary weapon. But again, I don't have too high of an expectation here, and having that subclass synergy of hatchling would be quite nice. So I think I would... I don't know. I don't have this one crafted yet, so I haven't made up my mind entirely. But my gut says rewind rounds hatchling, I think, will be the play there. I could also see an argument for rapid hit hatchling, just for having that sweet just natural boost to reload speed and stability, while I'm already aiming for precision shots to even proc hatchlings. So I'm torn. I'm really torn. Again, love it when a weapon has really convincing arguments for multiple different combinations there. As again, primarily a Strand Warlock player, I don't have as great a need with Golden Tricorn, even though Threadlings did get buffed. It's just I'd rather make more Threadlings than have my weapon do a little bit more damage. So I am good on the Hatchling perk and really nothing else. I agree with what Crota said about Sword Logic on primary weapons. Precision Instrument, I mean, rapid fires are pretty great for doing damage as far as the scout rifle archetypes go, but do I want this to be just there for extra precision damage as I'm dealing damage? I'm not thrilled about it. I don't know. That'd be kind of a tough one to decide on. I'm primarily here for hatchling, but I could be convinced to craft this just for precision instrument and then keep my glissando for my hatchling strand scout option there for my long distance threadling option. But yeah, right now I'm looking kind of to replace glissando more than to add an extra strand scout to my arsenal. But we'll see. That's where I'm leaning right now. How about you, Saint?
I could see an argument for rewind and precision because, I think the worst thing about precision instrument is that its duration is only like a second and a quarter, right? And rewind kind of helps, work against that a little bit and get you a little more benefit out of that. But I'm probably going to go, unless Shoot to Loot can train my Threadlings to go pick up ammo and orbs for me. I don't, they've been getting smarter and smarter. They keep growing up every season. I don't want to, hold them back too much, but I'm probably going Shoot to Loot and Golden Tricorn because I really like Strand Titan. Your best way, again, probably to get this proc is I'm getting melee kills. So Shoot to Loot, Golden Tricorn, you get the melee kill. Curse Thrall is also active at the same time. That's pretty nice. And then maybe if I really want like the conservative, like playing from a long distance away, I'm in a GM kind of play is Rewind Precision Instrument because that's just like really, really low risk, high uptime, damage buff of at least like probably 16% is like 4 or 5 stacks, and it goes up to like 25 at 6 stacks. So pretty good.
I just got this visual of a Threadling going off and picking up a Orb of Power and retrieving it for you, bringing it back.
on it, boss. I got it.
We talked about this last week, Saint, with Precision Instrument, and we're kind of discussing, is there any perks out there that have something that's quick enough or would negate the whole point of reloading? And here we go, we've got something like Rewind Rounds, which it's definitely an improvement if you want to use with Precision Instrument. Okay, all right, I'll kick us off with our next one. It's our second strand weapon. It is a special. We've got Swordbreaker, very aptly named when it comes to this raid. Is our Strand lightweight shotgun. That's 80 RPM. The frame bonus, of course, gives you that plus 20 mobility, and you get that 6.25% forward moving speed when you're just moving, strafing, not running, but just strafing. This is our first Strand lightweight shotgun. We're going to be sort of comparing it with Without Remorse and Wastelander. Swordbreaker has a range stat 49. That's the highest. It's actually got the lowest stability of 39. It's got the highest of 71 handling, which is very important for a lightweight shotgun here. It's got the lowest reload speed of 56 and the highest recoil direction of 56. So it's kind of up and down here, but in terms of where it matters, like handling, this is definitely what you want with a lightweight shotgun here. So it's not statistically dominant over other kind of raid weapons and their respective archetypes, but let's take a little look into the perk selection here. Now, when it comes to shotguns, entirely kind of up to you how you want to kind of frame your barrel and the magazine here. I think we're always going to recommend in PvE, at least for magazine here, Assault Mag, just getting that plus 10 RPM, plus you added stability here. And it's really kind of entirely up to you what you want to go in terms of barrel. Obviously, rifle barrel gives you that plus 10 range, but does sink your handling, which I don't think's a great choice here. Smoothbore gives you that plus 15 range. It increases the shotgun pellet spread by 7.5%, though. You've got full chalk here, so while aiming down sights, it decreases shotgun pellet spread by 3.75%, but also reduces your precision damage by 7.6%. Quite a small amount, maybe not necessarily something you're going to be kind of using for precision. You just want to kind of dump the magazine into a champion or any sort of combatant here. In terms of the perks here, again, we've got quite a great selection kind of to pick for any sort of playstyle here. Impetus said at the top of this section here, looking for pugilist roles. This does roll pugilist in the third column. And we've, of course, got 1-2 punch, our great kind of shotgun perk here. Icy Golden Tricorn I'm gravitating towards. We've got Surrounded. We do have the new Barrel Constrictor perk here. Final blows with this weapon reduce the projectile spread of the next shot for a short duration. But I think with, you've got your Surrounded Golden Tricorn. Sword logic here, I'd certainly say it as a use case. You're more likely going to kill mini bosses, champions, and bosses to get those 3 or 4 stacks. How are we? What are you feeling, Impetus, in terms of the third and fourth column perks?
This is the weapon that I really want to take advantage of Curse Thrall with. So you've already outlined what I would prioritize, which would be Pugilist, 1-2 punch, getting those shots off on an enemy, hitting all those pellets, getting increased melee damage. I kill them with 1-2 punch. I get melee energy for Pugilist. My handling gets shot all the way up to 100. To 100. Yeah, because it's 35 handling from Pugilist. So that gets me up to 100 handling on this. And then for the next 7.5 seconds, I am creating explosions when I kill an enemy with the shotgun. That is a fun fantasy there. Is it, the most viable for damage, for shotguns and their roles as special weapons? I'm not going to say that, but, I also don't really care. I just want to have fun. I want to punch things. I want them to explode after I shoot them with my weapon called Sword Breaker, and I want to have a good time. So that's the combo I'm going with here. But yeah, again, you got some great combos. The tried and true, the classic threat detector Surrounded is also going to work here. You got, we love this Pugilist and Demolitionist in column 3, so you've got some great interactions with the Golden Tricorn perk as well. But yeah, that's the fantasy that I want to chase is Pugilist 1-2 punch with the added Cursed Thrall cherry on top right there. How about you, Saint?
I'm probably going Pugilist Golden Tricorn, right? Again, that is just like, you throw in some Fletched Storm, okay, you get a kill, you just throw your massive array of strand projectiles, all of a sudden you get 50%, and everything that you kill explodes. And like you've just said, sometimes it's not about being meta, it's about exploding things. Honestly, that's what it comes down to in Destiny, and this is a really going to be a satisfying way to do that. The other combo I would consider, I kind of mentioned that Strand Syntheseps melee builds have started to bubble up a little bit in the meta. In that case, I would go with a Full Choke, Threat Detector, and 1-2 punch as a way to just really double down on my ability to be swapping between weapons really fast. My handling is going to be high, and I'm going to be getting a lot of kills on my Frenzied Blade and my just regular Titan powered Strand melee right there are going to do a lot of damage. But yeah, man, Pugilist Golden Tricorn, Pugilist 1-2 punch, there's just, this thing's kind of stacked up with traits. And we do see the new Barrel Constrictor again on this shotgun. Seems like more of a PvP trait, but is interesting to see the new stuff popping up on here. Not really sure that's going to fare in the player versus player side of the sandbox. We need a little bit more of an expert to rein in on the effect that could actually have, or if that's going to be worth it at all over there. Hatchling on a non-precision weapon like this just doesn't have quite as much of an appeal, right? You're going to have to get too many kills with the shotgun versus something like a grenade launcher maybe has a little bit more of a hatchling appeal for clearing out some enemies, which, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, where is our Breach Load GL with hatchling on it and demo,
I'm really, I'll be pretty keen on that. I gotta tell you guys.
Okay. Well, we got one more dungeon coming out next season.
Yeah.
Maybe the witness is hiding one in the Pale Heart, and we got to go take care of that.
Dude, worth it. Absolutely. All right, you guys good on that? We can jump over into our auto rifle here. We have got Abyss Defiant. This is a solar high impact auto rifle, 360 RPM. You're getting that minus 20% to your accuracy cone size and 17% against your cone growth while you're moving it slower than 2.8 meters per second, and you aim down sights. This is the first time we've seen a solar high impact auto rifle in a long time. The previous entry was Crota Mellow way back in season 15, Season of the Lost. We will compare this guy to Crota Mellow as well as Age Old Bond, which is void, but a much more recent entry into the game and something that's probably has been in players' hands much more over the past few seasons. The Abyss Defiant is coming out of the gate with 83 range, which is the highest by 1 point, 35 stability, highest by 5, 33 handling, which loses out to Age Old Bond by 5 points, and 35 reload speed, again, the highest by 1 point. So this is pretty decisively, definitively beating out Crota Mellow, a seasonal weapon, and even beats out Age Old Bond, another raid weapon that was just recently reprised in many categories, which honestly is saying something. Whenever we look over to our barrels and mags, we do not need range. We have got 83 off the bat, which is translating into about 36 meters of effective range, which is quite a lot. You could really double down on that. You could increase it. I think you can get that all the way up to around 39-ish meters if you want to max that out. But I don't, going from the extra 2 or 3 meters, I don't really think is worth it, especially when you could go for something like Fluted Barrel and give that plus 15 handling, taking you from a 33 way up to 48 is probably going to change the feel of the weapon a lot more, plus that little extra 5 points of stability. And then whenever we're looking at our mags here, no tack mag. We do have all of our rounds options as well as a alloy or appended mag. Personally, I'm probably going flared magwell. That's going to be an extra plus 5 to stability and 15 to my reload speed, which I'm looking to increase. There's some options in column 3 that do bump your reload speed up a little bit, but there are also a few other options that you may want to consider for more of a utility standpoint that will not be increasing your reload. So this is kind of a good way to compensate for that. Speaking of third column, we are going to start things off here with Pugilist, which is pretty interesting, giving our origin trait here. We also have Enlightened Action, Heal Clip, Zen Moment, Subsistence, Outlaw, and Reconstruction. And then moving over to the final column, Collective Action, Swashbuckler, Incandescent, Sword Logic, and Target Lock. Now, I generally think that Reconstruction is a bit of a bait on primary weapons where you're probably going to be using this weapon a lot. It's not the worst trait ever, but, I think that Reconstruction Target Lock is, I don't know, maybe that is not exactly built for our sandbox or just not something I think with Reconstruction you're going to want to focus on a lot, just because this would require you to not be using your weapon a lot for a primary weapon, which I don't exactly gravitate towards, but I don't know. Impetus, what are you seeing here? What are you gravitating towards with this auto rifle?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I was looking forward to this weapon when we first found out what the loot pool was, but after going through the past week of dealing with solar auto rifles, I'm a little solar auto rifled out myself, to be honest. I know it's a different archetype than Ahmed, but goodness gracious, I don't even want to think about this monster. But I'm torn because high impacts, if I'm going to use one, it's probably going to be for the range stat, right? That's obviously the thing they excel at over the other archetypes. The problem is that doesn't quite work in synergy with Cursed Thrall, right? I want to be getting melee attacks easily. I'm going to need to have a ranged melee, and that isn't always a guarantee to be doing that, pulling that off consistently if I want to actually use all 83 points of that range stat. So I see Pugilist, I see Swashbuckler, I'm thinking, hey, sweet, let's go for it. We just talked about how great that's going to be on Swordbreaker. Swordbreaker didn't have that crazy long range. It's a shotgun, right? It's meant to be up close and personal and do a lot of damage. I could use this up close and personal, but I don't like how these weapons feel. They are kind of a rough frame to deal with, and I want to play to the weapon's strengths. So, there's nothing stopping me from using a shorter range solar auto rifle and excelling in that regard. So I'm not sure if I'm going to actually go Pugilist Swashbuckler. Maybe I'll hang on to Swashbuckler. Really what I'm looking for most is Heel Clip in Column 3. That's kind of my top priority here, and trying to figure out what I want to pair with Heel Clip in Column 4 is where I'm getting hung up. I think, yes, you could do Swashbuckler. That would be excellent. Do a ranged melee there to really take advantage of stuff. I'd still get the Cursed Thrall action, but then when I go to reload, I do get health on top of that. Collective action, again, this can be any of the elemental pickups. Doesn't have to be matching the subclass or the weapon, anything at all. That's going to be really fluid, very dynamic, depending on various spaces. You could also just do the double dip into solar perks here. I'm kind of leaning towards Incandescent Heel Clip. My reload speed's going to be slow, and that might just be something that I need to bite the bullet on. Flare, gets me up to 50, but yeah, I don't know. I think right now just having a proper Solar 3.0 double Solar 3.0 solar auto rifle. Amit, of course, did get Incandescent, but yeah, Heel Clip right now is just unique to Abyss Defiant as far as solar auto rifles go, and I think that's kind of the synergy I want to play around with, because that could at least work on all 3 solar subclasses, which I play and love. So that's my recommendation. How about you, Court?
Yeah, just on top of the Kill Clip and Heel Clip synergy, this is our second of 3 weapons that have that double combination that you can roll Heel Clip in the third, Kill Clip in the fourth. But it's probably the weakest out of the 3. We talked about Heliocentric last week, Saint and I, and then we'll obviously be talking about Jurassic Green in a few weeks' time when that comes out, because that also has it. I think that's definitely going to be my big pick when it comes to Jurassic Green. But anyway, in terms of Abyss Defiant, yeah, I just out of a personal preference, I have a hard time with high impact ARs. I completely acknowledge that they've got like really great range, which is what I always want for a weapon anyway. But just with I'm looking at my dim here. I've got my Rufus's Fury for rapid fire. I've got let's see, I've got a really great old Sterling for adaptive. I just don't really have a lot of high impacts. The only other high impact I have is the Lodbrok C that was being sold a few seasons ago with dynamic sway reduction and target lock, and plus that's got the Hacky Reach armaments roll on top of that. So it's just not something I really use. And if I am going to use an incandescent roll for a solar rifle, alt rifle, I would use my Amit, even though we've been seeing thousands of those during the crafting. But yeah, it's something about Abyss Defiant. I kind of share the same sentiment with Impetus, where I was kind of hyped up when I knew this was coming back, but just after looking at the perk pool, it's this is maybe, or in my opinion, it's probably the weakest out of the 6, which is saying something, because they're all really great. This still has a great position within the sandbox, but personally I just don't feel I could really recommend anything other than just typical kind of I mean, I could see a use case for reconstruction, but yeah, as Saints pointed out, it's maybe not so much for a primary weapon. And then the other perks in third column, not going to use Pugilist for an AR, maybe use Heel Clip. Enlightened Action is probably going to be my pick, and then I'm thinking pairing that with Collective Action and pair that with my gold, my Solar Hunter with the ranged melee to get that Curse Thrall. Again, I could also use Pugilist with that as well. But really, I'm just a bit meh when it comes to this with this weapon.
I think the one thing that has gotten me to really enjoy this is the fact that the ranged melees can not only proc swash, but can proc curse thrall. And as a Titan that has unlimited, essentially ranged powered melee at my fingertips, it's pretty easy to have swash times 5 and curse thrall up all the time. I don't think that this is something that's going to super hold up as you get into content where you're at a pretty significant level deficit, but in your kind of lower tier to like middling content, as long as you're not at a big level deficit, I think Swashbuckler Curse Thrall with Mini Hammer, and Solar Titan is a ton of fun to use. And like Court said, I'm probably going to be pairing that with a Light in Action because my Hammer's going to be giving me Cure anyway, so not a ton of value there from Heal Clip, but if you're not playing on a really, on the Bonk Hammer Solar Titan, then yeah, I don't see a ton of draw to the Abyss Defiant.
Rough stuff, man. Rough stuff. They can't all be bangers, right? Well, let's move on to an actual banger here in Oversoul Edict. This is our rapid fire arc pulse rifle firing at 540 RPM. Frame bonus for rapid fire pulse rifles is that 0.8 times reload scalar when your magazine is empty. We do have another arc rapid fire pulse rifle to compare this to as our archetype here. This is the Horrors Least that was refreshed from Season 17 onwards via the Nightfall/GM, so it did have the Adept variant as well. Before that, we had the Darkest before that's dropping from Prophecy, but we're mostly just going to be comparing it to Horrors Least, as that's another quote-unquote in-game arc rapid fire here in our statistical breakdown. So looking at Oversoul Edict, you've got 27 range versus Horror Least's 34, 47 stability versus Horror Least 49, 22 handling, that is tied, 34 reload speed versus 35 on Horror's Least, and then 49 recoil direction versus the 55 on Horror's Least. So it's close, but Horror's Least is no longer in the loot pool for Nightfalls, and the normal variant is only acquirable via focusing, so you've got a trade-off here to make is what we're bringing this up. Oversoul can be crafted after your 5 red boxes, and it does have a more updated, overall much better perk pool, especially with Arc 3.0 now around. So there's definitely some trade-offs here. Don't let the comparisons be too much of a bother on the stats. But yeah, we do have some things we want to work on, things we want to address here. Let's start with that recoil direction. Again, these rapid-fire pulse rifles are typically quite low. And being a burst weapon, you absolutely want to address your recoil direction, which means when we go to barrels, Arrowhead's going to be a pretty obvious pick. It would be tough for me to swap over to anything else. Of course, Arrowhead taking you up to 79, that's going to be much more manageable. You do get a little bump to the handling, which is also low. That takes you up to 32, very helpful there. Comes to your magazine here, we do have our rounds options. Looking at range and stability, I don't know if I'd go ricochet rounds. I might do armor piercing. High cal is interesting as well. We've got some options for reload speed stat modifiers in column 3. I'm not too pressed on that, so I would probably just say let's go with any one of the 3 rounds. Kind of pick your poison, have some fun here. Column 3 and 4, though, this is where things get a little bit more exciting here. So starting in column 3, Enlightened Action, we've got Perpetual Motion, we've got Demolitionist, we've got Keep Away. Moving over to column 4, Swashbuckler, High Ground, I'm just kidding, don't use High Ground. We've got Adrenaline Junkie, Sword Logic, Volt Shot, rounding that out. Again, much more updated than Horror's Least. This is very much with Arc 3.0 in mind. You do have some options here. I should also actually kind of point out that Eddy Current does show up in column 3. Eddy Current is not a good perk currently. It does not do enough, but if it got buffed, there could be some excellent synergy there with being in the Arc subclass, so I'll shout it out, but I'm not going to recommend it right now.
I want it to be so good, so badly.
It could be.
And it's just not.
We just got to wait. It'll happen. It's a late bloomer. It happens. live service game. One day, Eddy Current will be singing your praises, but today is not that day. So, again, a lot of different options, a lot of different ways you could take it here. Saint, what are you looking at in Calm 3 that's not Eddy Current?
Until that gets buffed, I feel like I've got to go for Enlightened Action. It is kind of targeting, handling and reload speed aren't super high, and you can get up to, I want to say it's plus 50 to each one of these stats, and you're shooting a pulse rifle. If each one of those bullets is causing a damage instance, then shooting a singular burst from your pulse rifle is giving you plus 30 handling and plus 30 reload speed, which frankly is a bit ridiculous. And if I want to pump that reload speed up because I'm going to be reloading a lot. Because I'm probably going Volt Shot in the final column there, which is really nice to see on a little bit of a ranged weapon. We use Volt Shot a lot on some of our closer distance weapons. Your Ikelos SMG, right, is super famous for that. But I really, that combo of Enlightened Action plus Volt Shot is going to be really easy to have up pretty much all the time. But I mean, honestly, that's just one combo out of many here. If I'm taking my, arrowhead break and a high cal rounds, kind of help my other stuff out there. If I get Enlightened Action all the way up, you're looking at 82 handling and 84 reload speed, which is taking your reload down to like 1.4 seconds, which is really nice, even if you're not going all the way down to get that rapid fire frame bonus reload. Court, how about you? What are you looking at on the edict here?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what they could do to Eddy Current because we've got some really great reload perks in the first place, like Enlightened Action, perk motions there as well, and Keep Away is also there. So I'm really not sure what they could do to Eddy Current, but having that dual synergy would be wonderful. I do love my weapons, and we're beginning to see with kind of additional elemental perks now appearing on tier column 3. I want to love it, but I can't because Eddy Current's, I'm not actually sure what the stats are. I don't think anyone's really tested it, but as far as I know, it's not breaking any awards here. And so, yeah, I think Enlightened Action for me as well, and Volt Shot. I'm just trying to think how this could pair with Curse Thrall. If you're an Arc Hunter, obviously our melees are very close quarters, so you'd probably be pairing this with a different subclass for Hunters, whether that's Stasis Hunter or Solar Hunter. So you do miss out on the synergy of getting Volt Shot. You don't get the kind of looping within the arc build if you're on a different class here. I do see Demo and AJ is here as well. If you want to go down that route, again, you're not really exploiting Curse Thrall. You're kind of going down the typical route of grenades. But there's definitely some synergy here. I'm looking forward to crafting this, more so for my Warlock and my Titan, being able to get Volt Shot plus Enlightened Action, and then going crazy fun with the arc explosions from Curse Thrall. All right, we have our fifth weapon here. It's another primary here. We've got Word of Crota. It is a Void Precision Hand Cannon, and it's 180 RPM, and that frame bonus is 20% less recoil yaw, and you get 25%, 25 plus 25 airborne effectiveness. The recoil yaw, just if you're wondering, that's your horizontal recoil, so it just stabilizes it a little bit better. So we're going to be pairing this with our very recent Ikelos hand cannon back in season 19, that's Seraph. That's our last and currently only other non-sunset hand cannon. Obviously that was itself a refresh of the original gun. So yeah, Ikelos hand cannon is our kind of competitor here when it comes to Word of Crota. 31 range versus 32, 57 stability versus 55, 36 handling versus 33, 57 reload versus 33. That's a massive jump there between the two there, and 100 recoil right off the offset, 100 recoil direction versus 91. Kind of standard for precision hand cannons in the first place anyway. All right, so in terms of barrels and mags here, what are we going to be kind of focusing? Again, as I've mentioned before, I am your kind of go-to range guy. So stuff like your like full bore does tank your stability and handling a little bit. You do get that plus 15 range. You do have extended barrel, again, that's a minus 10 handling. There's no increase to recoil direction because you've already got that to 100. You've got fluted barrel if you want to have more of a handling based hand cannon here. But for me anyway, I think small bore, just your kind of bog standard, plus 7 to stability and range as a kind of combination if you're on a controller especially. When it comes to the magazine here, not so many kind of round based things. We've got quite a lot of magazine, your flared magwell, which is your plus 15 reloads, bumps that up to 72. You've got accurized rounds, again if you're a big range fiend like I'd probably go for that. Then you've got your appended mag just to kind of bump up the mag size as well. But it's all really to do with the column 3 and 4 perks here. Just shout outs here. Got Dragonfly actually, quite rare to see that on a kind of modern weapon. Dragonfly in the 3rd column. We've got Repulsor Brace. Enlightened Action makes another appearance here again. And we've got Demo in the 3rd column. Over in the 4th column, Frenzy, very solid kind of PvE perk here. Just does its job. It's quite a workhorse of a perk. Sword Logics here, again, probably not going to recommend that with this being another primary weapon. Weirdly, we see Rampage. Very interesting to see that again on a kind of modern-ish hand cannon here. We've got destabilizing rounds if you want to pair that with Repulsor Brace, and of course we've got Adrenaline Junkie. So naturally, with this being a hand cannon, it's going to be a little bit more close range. There's no kind of focus on melee based perks here, so probably going to go down the route of Demo AJ. If you want to go for Repulsor Brace plus destabilizing rounds, loop that into your Void synergy builds, especially on Hunter, and you've got Frenzy there. So I think for me, probably, I'm thinking actually Dragonfly stacking on top of Curse Thrall, and how is that going to look? But yeah, I think Frenzy for me here. I've already got a few weapons that I've got the Void, like 4-point synergy with Repulsor Brace and destabilizing rounds, so I'm probably not going to use that on this hand cannon. And if I'm not mistaken, I think does Ikelos have that? I don't have the page up currently, but
Ikelos have which one?
Does it have that combination of repulsor plus destabilizing?
Oh no, it doesn't. No,
yeah,
no,
I don't
no.
think so. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Saint, what are you feeling with this?
This is kind of tough. You could go for the triple explosion route if you wanted Dragonfly plus destabilizing rounds plus Curse Thrall, and you just want things to explode everywhere, which again, like we said earlier, sometimes it's just about exploding things, frankly. But I'm probably gonna have to go Dragonfly Frenzy. It's just like, you're getting a little bit of that extra add clear damage. You're getting just base damage turned up. You're getting reload speed. You're getting handling cranked way up. It's ridiculously strong. 180 hand cannons are already in a pretty strong position as far as just like add clear primaries go. I mean, they're now that they've, hand cannons that have had all their buffs and that's shaken out a little bit, they're quite good. If we got ourselves into another Void season and I started going back to that offensive bulwark kit on the Titan, I definitely can see going, taking this thing back to the Enclave and putting Repulsor Brace destabilizing on there. But for the time being, Dragonfly Frenzy just is really calling my name. Impetus?
Yeah, this is probably the most difficult one for me to decide on. I mean, there's so many different ways we could take this. I think what I'll start with is probably a Repulsor Brace Frenzy, kind of as a general Void option. Again, if we do get Void Season, yeah, I'll probably swap over to Destabilizing Rounds, Repulsor Brace. But there's also Destabilizing and Adrenaline Junkie, right? You could do Thrown a Grenade. I can't remember the fragment for Void where grenades apply Weaken, but get kills with that off of Vortex Grenade on, say, my Controverse holds Void Warlock, which famously struggles to get Void Overshields. Get that Adrenaline Junkie kill from the grenade. My weapon does more damage. Repulsor Brace kicks in, get that Overshield on my Void Warlock. That could be very, very helpful there. But I think it's definitely going to be Repulsor Brace column 3. What I pair with Repulsor Brace is what I'm still hung up on. But yeah, love having all these great options here. Love feeling like I can't go wrong, right? There's a solid argument for all those damage perks in column 4. Do we know, does Dragonfly increase the spread of destabilizing rounds, or is that a set explosion from destabilizing rounds that can't be modified? I don't know that off the top of my head.
Each have their own radius, with the epicenter being like the headshot.
Okay.
Because I want to say Dragonfly is not quite as big as, like, Destabilizing Rounds, I think, is bigger radius than Dragonfly, just like outright. Dragonfly 4.5 meters, Destabilizing Rounds 6.5 meters.
I see.
So
gotcha.
I don't think, but I've also never shot this weapon with those two traits together. So I can't, you can't definitively say, right, until we give it a try.
Interesting. Yeah, great weapon. Yeah. Love this weapon.
Yeah, plus, you're using your Falcons. You don't even need the destabilizing, right? Court, I know that's absolute go-to for you.
Which is why, like, I know you guys have been talking about Repulsor Brace and destabilizing rounds on many other weapons before this one, and me being a hunter, like, I have pretty easy access to volatile rounds and being able to spread volatility through my sandbox in the first place. So yeah, I think if you're purely focusing on class builds here, I would maybe not think of destabilizing rounds. Yes, it's great. It's a great perk if you want to go with that triple boom build with Curse for All, destabilizing Dragonfly. But at least for hunters, we already have access to that, which is why I would probably go down the route of Frenzy in the first place.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, time for the last one here, the Soul Heavy Weapon, and it's a doozy. This is the Song of Ur-Ute. This is an ARC adaptive frame machine gun. Again, adaptive frames just have nice stats. They're pretty to look at. That's their frame bonus, firing at 450 rounds per minute. We got a crowded field here in the adaptive machine gun world, but we'll give a quick shout out to the only other ARC adaptive being a Fine Memorial. That was, I'll wait and see if you can guess where that comes from, because it's been a minute. That was originally a Shadowkeep weapon, but it did get its perk pool refreshed back in Season 14, Season of the Splicer. Needless to say, it's been a minute since we've had an ARC adaptive, which is why we're getting one in this raid now. I'm not actually going to be comparing it to a Fine Memorial. We've got plenty of other really, really strong adaptive frame machine guns. I'm going to be comparing this one to two of the best here, Unwavering Duty from Trials and Commemoration, the very famous other raid one. Actually, one of the other raid ones, because we do have Corrective Measure dropping from Vault of Glass, which is yet another adaptive frame. But we're going to be looking at Unwavering Duty and Commemoration and comparing those two to Song of Ur-Ute. Let's see how things go here. Song of Ur-Ute has a range of 49. That is lowest compared to Unwavering Duty and Commemoration. Stability of 42. That is also the lowest. Handling of 59. That is the highest by a teeny tiny bit. Reload speed of 50. That is the lowest. And a recoil direction of 80, which is the highest by a teeny tiny bit. So Song of Ur-Ute, it's a crowded field. There's some tough competition. Ur-Ute does struggle a little bit against the field statistically, but the perk pool, almost as always, does save it from irrelevance when it comes to our dungeon and raid weapons. So let's get into those here. Nice thing about Song of Ur-Ute, you got that nice high recoil direction. We don't really need to worry too much about something like Arrowhead Break. That would get you all the way up to 100 if you really want that. It does throw in a little bit of handling here, but again, being an adaptive, you just get to pick the stat that you want to work on. There's not really a need to address one that forces your hand here. So for me, I like these heavy weapons to feel snappy, so handling is my preference here, but I'm not going to try and go airhead break. I'd rather do fluted barrel here. A little bit of stability doesn't hurt there. That gives me a nice big boost to my handling. On the magazine side here, we've got the rounds perks. We do have appended mag here as well as extended mag. I don't think we want to go extended mag, tanking that reload speed. Machine guns already reload quite slowly. Appended mag, I think you can make an argument for. More bullets is always a nice thing, but you got armor piercing, high caliber, ricochet rounds. You do also have, I should say, light mag, flare mag. Well, again, a lot of great options here, and with an adaptive frame machine gun, I think you could make a solid case for those, but again, personally, I'd probably go with one of our rounds options here just to make the machine gun hit a little bit harder. Maybe help it out whenever we do have an anti-champion machine gun mod in the artifact, which we do have this season, of course, with overload machine gun. Getting into the columns 3 and 4. Here we go, baby. We got Unrelenting in column 3. Love to see it. Feeding Frenzy, Demolitionist, Keep Away, Rewind Rounds, Reconstruction. That's pretty much everything. I didn't mention Zen Moment because that's a PvP perk, but it's a great perk nonetheless. This has got a great column 3. Column 4, we've got Volt Shot, we've got Cascade Point, we've got Sword Logic, we've got Bait and Switch showing up for the first time on a machine gun, and of course, Target Lock. So a lot of different options, a lot of solid options. Like I said, stat package ain't something to really be surprised by, but that perk pool is, though. A lot of different directions to take this in. Court, what are you looking at for a Song of Iryu?
For me, quite a few options here. Seeing Demo and Unrelenting in there, that's like Unrelenting is pretty low-key perk, not necessarily underappreciated, but people aren't always recommending it. But if you're planning to slay out with a machine gun, then here you go. This is your go-to perk. You've got Demo if you're into grenade-based builds. And then obviously you've got your sort of quote magazine perks in column 3 with Rewind and Reconstruction. Not too sure what I'd go for, but in terms of column 4, I keep having to double check I'm on the right tab here because I'm looking at Bait and Switch. I'm thinking that's not right on a machine gun.
On a machine gun?
Yeah, it's very strange seeing that symbol on column 4 of a machine gun. But I'm honestly, I'm really stuck. Like, I could go for Bait and Switch. I could go for Sword Logic. I would certainly see a use case of Sword Logic on this, because if you can get that last kind of final kill with a final kill of a boss for 4 stacks to get that 50%, and then keep that duration up by just killing miners, rank and file elites and all that, then you're going absolute tearaway with this machine gun, like doing a lot of damage just for such a simple thing of triggering it through a mini boss with that 3 stacks or a boss with 4 stacks. So to me, as we mentioned with the Plunder Arc machine gun, obviously with a different frame here compared to this, Plank Strides.
Yeah, Planks.
Yeah, we didn't recommend Volt Shot because it's a machine gun. I still don't think I would recommend Volt Shot here again. I think there's still other options. Like we already talked about the Pulse Rifle earlier on with Volt Shot anyway. But Volt Shot's maybe a little bit of a trap perk when it comes to a machine gun, especially if you are pairing with Rewind Rounds and Reconstruction, because you obviously can't proc it through that, and then you won't be able to reload in the first place if you've got those perks active anyway. There's tons of options here. Like Target Lock is still a great just damage perk in the first place anyway. I'm really stuck. I might need to craft a few of these. I think this is the next machine or the next weapon I will focus next time out at the Relic, because I'm out of 4 out of 5 at the moment. I'm really looking forward to craft this. Saint, what are you feeling here?
I'm looking at this and thinking Reconstruction and Bait and Switch is kind of disgusting because, Target lock goes up to 40%, but, it takes a minute. and you got to let it get there. And I think that something that people overlook with bait and switch or don't consider enough with bait and switch is you don't have to hit the same target with all of your weapons. It just says deal damage with all of your equipped weapons. You can hit, you can hit something with your hand cannon. You swap over to your fusion, get a shot off, and then pull your machine gun out, and then just start going to town with a big damage buff. It's kind of ridiculous. So it sounds really good. I don't know how that's going to play out in practice, but it's definitely something I'm at least going to try out. If I hopefully can get one of these to drop with bait and switch before I craft the thing. If not, I'm going to craft it and at least give it a try. I don't think that, something like reconstruction bait and switch is going to be go-to for DPS, even though the total damage output on that is probably very high. I just don't think the DPS is going to be high enough to necessarily make that a strong option. But yeah, I think I'm going unrelenting in the third column probably. That's just so good for a clear weapon like this. And maybe sword logic if I'm not really feeling bait and switch, because yeah, I think I would agree that this seems like the weapon that sword logic could really shine on, getting those mini boss elite kills pretty easily. If I already have a 15% damage buff stacked up, you could be in 25-30% stacked up, and then just chaining that going to town. I don't know. That just sounds really strong and like a lot of fun. So I'm gonna give bait and switch a try, and then maybe sword logic if I'm not exactly feeling that. Unfortunately, the first version of this that I got to drop for me as a red border was Reconstruction Volt Shot, which is just some real strong, just not even non-synergistic, but anti-synergy, in fact. I know that there's some good rolls out there, though, so I'm gonna keep running. I'm gonna keep running Crota. Gonna see what we can get to drop. All right, that rounds us out for our normal weapons, so to say, for the raid. Now we're going to kind of jump into the exotic quest and Necrochasm. We'll start off with talking about Elon Ally a little bit here. Elon Ally, however you'd like to say that. This is a kinetic rapid-fire auto rifle, 720 RPM. It's got that same 0.8 times reload scaler, or 20% increase in reload speed when your mag is empty. This is just part of the quest to get Necrochasm after you get the white version of this weapon, which is called Husk of the Pit. It gets upgraded here to the Ally, and it is a static roll. This is not a super strong PvE weapon necessarily. It's got arrowhead break, ricochet rounds, rangefinder, and perpetual motion. So honestly, a pretty strong crucible, I would say, trait set here. Not necessarily super strong for PvE. Its stats are quite good, though, when you compare it to our last rapid fire kinetic, which was Chroma Rush from Season of the Splicer, which is a long time ago. This thing does beat that out in almost every stat category. It has one less point in zoom, but that's maybe not quite as important as it was for a long time. So it's an auto rifle that has good stats and Curse the Roll. Not something that you're probably going to be using very much in PvE, but it is technically a weapon that comes from this raid. So, we do need to mention it in here. What is much more interesting, though, is the weapon that this weapon can become, which is Necrochasm, which I'm going to hand it back to Court here to talk about, because I missed getting my guaranteed Necrochasm by about 30 minutes. So I'm not exactly in the best place to talk about this thing until maybe next week when I can round out my triumphs and maybe a couple drops there in the Oversoul Edict. Court?
Yes, if you weren't here for that episode, Impetus and I managed to get this an hour or so after the raid finished up, but it was still guaranteed drop with Necrochasm when it was supposed to only be within the confines of the contest mode, that 48-hour period. So we lucked out. We managed to do a quick run and get it to drop, which is great. But yes, Necrochasm, this is a 720 RPM, maybe question marks if you're familiar with the original Necrochasm from Destiny 1, but hold your horses here. It's got the arrowhead break, best perk here, obviously, for this type of frame. You've got ricochet rounds, and you've got the hand-laid stock as an option for perks. So its exotic perk to kick us off here is Cursebringer. The description here: precision final blows with this weapon triggers a Curse Thrall explosion. Final blows with Curse Thrall explosions refill the magazine. So the technical details here: precision kill or a Curse Thrall explosion kill triggers a Curse Thrall explosion, dealing arc damage, and applies poison to nearby targets. Poison deals damage every 0.5 seconds for 2 seconds, and the Curse Thrall explosion and poison scale with combatant rank multipliers. Basically, in layman terms, if you're killing a bulky target, then you'll be the poison and the explosion will do a much bigger damage effect compared to if it's just, say, like a thrall. The other exotic trait here is Desperation, which basically kind of we mentioned Desperado earlier on, so it's very kind of similar here. Reloading after a precision final blow or a final blow with a Curse Thrall explosion increases your rate of fire and improves stability and aim assist. So the technical details here: on a reload after a precision kill or a Curse Thrall explosion kill, gain the following for 7 seconds, and that duration is, of course, refreshable. So you get I'll start us off with the minor stats here. You get +6 stability and approximately between +10 to 15 aim assist, which is fair enough for this weapon. But the big important thing here is that 0.8x fire recovery delay multiplier. So in basic terms, the fire rate between each bullet fired is reduced and effectively makes Necrochasm a 900 RPM auto rifle, so like its original design in Destiny 1. Note, while this makes it a 900 RPM, it still has the same damage profile and outgoing damage scalars as its original 720 RPM. So there's no confusing kind of I'm doing less damage as I'm doing increased rate of fire, as would be normally the case if a weapon's frame gets changed by some extraordinary means here. But there's no funky damage scaling here. You do 900 RPM with the same exact damage profile and outgoing damage. The catalyst here, I'll round us off here for Necrochasm, is Outlaw. On precision kill and for 6 seconds, you get +70 reload speed and a 10% reload duration scaler. Probably not necessary for this for weapons, but there's certainly a use case for Outlaw. Maybe another Catalyst perk would have been better here, but it's great to have on Necrochasm. Impetus, you want to kind of finish us with the synergy and other synergies here?
Oh my goodness, the synergies, yes. So Necrochasm, surprise, surprise, is a weapon of sorrow. So it follows in the footsteps of Osteostriga, Touch of Malice, Thorn, and then of course the Warlock Exotic Arms Necrotic Grip. So we can pair this weapon with Necrotic Grip specifically to provide the following buff. That is +30 airborne effectiveness. The poison damage is increased, and the poison damage spreads to nearby targets and can cause a cascading chain reaction here. Necrochasm kind of coming into a weird spot where I think Osteostriga is probably the most dominant weapon at the same range band that Necrochasm would be in. If you wanted to get a little bit longer range, probably swap over to Touch of Malice. Thorn, of course, I think just does not have as many bullets as Osteostriga does. Of course, doesn't have the crazy exotic perk and catalyst that Osteo does that just puts bullets back into the magazine. So I won't even include Thorn, even with the catalyst coming in Season 23. But yeah, there's some tough competition here for Necrochasm and that synergy. But yes, it is there, of course. Last thing I wanted to say regarding Weapons of Sorrow is that the Blight Shot from Touch of Malice increases all Weapon of Sorrow damage to an affected target. That is a 50% increased damage to targets affected by the Blight Shot. So yes, you could have a whole team running Weapons of Sorrow, 4 different Warlocks with the 4 different Weapons of Sorrow, and that would be quite fun. But it's kind of tough to say. Would that be the first weapon I reach for if I have Necrotic Grips on as a Warlock? Probably not. I think Osteostriga is still going to be number one. Going to be very hard to top Osteostriga. But yes, Necrochasm is certainly a fun weapon for creating explosions in the vein of a Cursed Thrall. And yes, a nice fun little callback to the 900 RPM there with the Desperation perk. Some other interesting synergies to note. The Cursed Thrall explosion is arc, so it does activate the following effects, assuming that the explosion kills the target. It will activate the Amplify condition if you are on an arc subclass. The Fragment Spark of Discharge will spawn an Ionic Trace, again assuming you're on the arc subclass there. The Arc Aspect Electrostatic Mine for Warlock will spawn an Ionic Trace, which in turn will make you amplified. The Warlock Exotic Helmet Verity's Brow will add a Death Throw stack if you are on an Arc subclass. The Mantle of Battle Harmony Warlock Exotic Chest will activate its effects if you are on an Arc subclass. And the Titan Helmet Precious Scars will provide a healing burst if they are on an Arc subclass. We do also have Arc Orbs, which would spawn. That's the Season 22 artifact perk, the little kind of substitute Warmind cells. The Arc Flavor will spawn on the Cursed Thrall explosion. So if you do have Necrochasm and you've been getting some kills and some weird things have been happening, like I just mentioned, that is why. It is because your explosion is arc flavored. So it is tying into all of the various synergies on the arc subclass, plus a few things in the artifact as well. So again, something to be aware of here. You're not going crazy. You're not doing anything wrong. That is Necrochasm and just the interesting synergy there with how Necrochasm functions. Kind of a cool option, cool weapon. I haven't gotten the Catalyst yet. Cord, have you gotten the Catalyst unlocked and completed?
Not yet. Close to.
Yeah.
I just need to think 10 more Oversouls.
Yep. Yeah, it's a fun weapon. I was taking it out on the moon, firing it. Very fun. The change in the change in the RPM definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, especially if you're trying to chain those precision kills. But yeah, once you're aware of it, it's quite fun to suddenly have it speed up and then get the Cursed Thrall explosion kills. Those are quite enjoyable. But that wraps up all of our weapons here from the Reprise Crow's End. What are we thinking? Is this a solid raid weapon batch? A little bit lower than what we expected, a little bit higher than what we expected, kind of run-of-the-mill, if that's even a proper term to apply to our in-game weapon set?
I think you guys put it pretty aptly earlier on where, some of these choices aren't necessarily the meta, they're not necessarily the damage strat, but they are the fun strat here. Like pretty much all of these weapons have just great fun combinations with the origin trait paired with some perks as well. I think it's got its place in the game if you just want to mess around. You can take these into middling or end game content. I think they perform pretty well, especially that machine gun. That machine gun is it's hot. It's really good.
Yeah, I think it's not crazy to say that the origin trait really carries in the case of this weapon set whenever you're able to get it procced. Yeah, I'm having to play on a lot of builds, Bonkhammer Titan, Fletched Storm, or just regular Strand Titan, and have a lot of melee. So I think I've been enjoying, I think I see this weapon set is so good because it's so easy for me to proc this trait right now. It does good damage, and it lasts for 15 seconds with the artifact mod, which is nuts. I mean, just ridiculous amount of uptime for this explosion effect that, yeah, it's just a lot of fun. You can't help but smile watching things explode all around you.
Well put. I don't think I have anything else to add. It's definitely a raid set. There's some stuff I really want. I did craft the machine gun. Love the machine gun. Definitely going to be hard to take off here. I don't know if it'll top my retrofit escapade, but my goodness, the sword logic really does shine in GMs, especially this season one with the overload. I mean, I think that's kind of the activity that I think of for sword logic to really shine. Is you got a whole range of different enemies. They all hit pretty hard. You take a lot of damage. You need to really be mindful of how much damage you're outputting to stay alive. Sword logic is just so clutched for chaining that and slowly building up stacks as you move through different tiers of enemies. So, yeah. Great weapon set and fun exotic. I finally get to say I've played with Necrochasm.
Yeah, would be nice. Dude, would be nice. But soon enough. All right, that is all we have for episode 79. Thanks for listening to another episode of PvE. It's been great having everybody back together to do a big raid episode this week. We also want to thank our audio engineer, Autodidaktos, for helping us sound our best each and every episode. My name is St. Kabir. You can find me by that name on social media platforms or over in the Destiny Massive Breakdowns Discord server, where you can talk about the podcast, look at roles, make recommendations, all that kind of stuff. Impetus, where can our listeners find you?
My name is Impetus. You can find me by that name in Discord and in Destiny. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions about weapon role recommendations. Love talking about that stuff all day. Court, where can we find you?
Yep. Court projects over on the various social media websites. You can also find me on the Discord as Court Projects as well. You can find my work and other great applications and websites to enhance your Destiny experience over on the Destiny Massive Breakdowns website or the Destiny Spreadsheets link tree. Not sure what we're going to be talking about next week, but the three of us are back. It's good to be back, and we'll see you next time.